Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Browning family. In 2008, Nicholas Browning turned 15. He was considered a kind-hearted teenager and a hard-working student. As the eldest child, he grew up in a family where his father, John Browning, was a respected attorney. John was also a Boy Scout leader and Sunday school teacher, earning admiration and recognition in the local community. Nicholas's mother, Tamara, was a kind and humble housewife, while his younger brothers, Benjamin and Greg, were well-loved members of the family. The Browning family lived in a house in Cockeysville, Maryland, a small town. Nicholas was an excellent student and a dedicated Boy Scout. While in high school, he was a tall and handsome young man, active on the golf and lacrosse teams, and admired as a role model. Many believed he had a bright future ahead of him. On the surface, the family seemed to be living a happy life, until tragedy struck. On the afternoon of February 2, 2008, Nicholas's parents drove him to a friend's house for a sleepover, where Nicholas and his friends planned to watch movies and play video games. The next morning, Nicholas and his friends needed to return home. Nicholas's parents had promised to pick him up in the morning, but they did not arrive on time. He tried calling them to find out what was going on, but no one answered. Frustrated, the teens decided to go to the mall with his friend's father. After shopping, they dropped Nicholas off at his home. During the trip, Nicholas repeatedly called and texted his parents, but there was still no response. When they arrived at his house, they noticed the family car parked in the driveway, but the house was strangely quiet. When Nicholas opened the door and walked in, he witnessed a horrifying scene. His entire family had been murdered. His father, John Browning, his mother, Tamara, and his two younger brothers, Greg and Benjamin, were all dead. A friend's father called 911 to report the incident, and the police arrived quickly at the scene. They found the teenagers in the yard, visibly shaken. Nicholas immediately claimed that a robbery had taken place. He explained that while he was staying overnight with friends, someone had broken into the house. He believed that the intruders' plans had been interrupted by his parents, and as a result, the robbers had killed the entire family. However, the crime scene shows another theory. There were no signs of a struggle, and police discovered 4 victims, each killed by a single gunshot to the head, in various parts of the house. A quick inspection of the property revealed no evidence of theft. Furniture was undamaged, and valuables in plain sight had not been disturbed. There were no signs of forced entry or any disturbance, leading the police to dismiss the idea of a botched robbery. Nicholas's account and behavior raised suspicions. Despite the teenager's young age and the possibility of shock, all 4 boys were taken to the police station for questioning. To ensure that their statements could not be coordinated, they were separated into different rooms for individual questioning. During the interrogations, Nicholas's friends all gave the same account. They had spent the evening watching movies and playing video games until late, after which the group went to bed. They said they had not heard or seen anything unusual that night. The interview with Nicholas took place in a private room. The officer found Nicholas's behavior suspicious. When the officer entered the room, Nicholas was sitting quietly with his head down, appearing calm and even a little sleepy. An unusual reaction, considering that his entire family had just been murdered. The officer approached the conversation in a friendly manner, aiming to make it seem like a casual discussion with the witness. His goal was to gain Nicholas's trust so that he would answer truthfully. The officer hoped to secure a confession without a defense attorney present. Nicholas remained calm the interview. He explained that he had returned home from school at around 2:45 p.m. Shortly afterward, his parents decided to take him to a friend's house. Since the friend lived less than a kilometer away, they often walked to each other's houses. Nicholas told the same story as his friends, stating that they spent the evening playing video games and watching movies before going to bed. However, he admitted that he left his friend's house and went to his parents' house around midnight. His plan was to steal the family car and go out with his friends, making sure his parents didn't find out. When he got home, he noticed that the light was on in his parents' bedroom window. At that point, he climbed into the car. To avoid being seen, he lay down on the floor of the back seat. Nicholas was worried that the noise he made while opening the car door might alert his parents, but he didn't want to face his strict father's scolding. He decided to stay quiet and wait until the house was settled and everyone went back to bed. Nicholas claimed that he waited in the car and eventually fell asleep. It is possible that the shooting occurred during this time. Nicholas stated that he didn't hear anything and only woke up later before leaving. The forensic expert's report confirmed that the attack on the family occurred around midnight, killing everyone in the house. The family appeared to have been caught off guard. The first shot was fired at close range, killing the father, John, who was sleeping on the couch downstairs. Tamara and the two sons, who were sleeping upstairs, were also killed in their sleep. The police suspected that Nicholas might have been involved in the murder. His behavior raised suspicions, as he had withheld information from the police. It seemed odd that he chose to hide in the family car instead of immediately returning to his friend's house. Furthermore, Nicholas was the only survivor of the family and was home at the time of the murder. However, he claimed that he didn't hear anything, which further cast doubt on his testimony. Nicholas's claim that the lights were on in the house raised additional suspicions, as they were off when the police arrived at the scene. Considering his statement about the robbery, it was unclear why the robbers would leave the lights on during the robbery, and then turn them off afterward. Typically, criminals do not waste time on such actions. Nicholas had no explanation for these inconsistencies. The police then spoke to Nicholas's friend, who stated that Nicholas was at his house in the evening, but was no longer there when he woke up around midnight. According to his statement, Nicholas had already left by that time. This created an inconsistency in the timeline, suggesting that the teens might not be telling the truth. Due to inconsistencies in their statements, the police returned to Nicholas's friend for clarification. Initially, the friend confirmed that Nicholas was no longer at the house around midnight. However, when the police pointed out the conflicting timelines provided by others, he quickly changed his story. He then stated that Nicholas was still at the house at midnight. Nicholas's friend appeared nervous and hesitant to tell the truth, possibly in an effort to protect his friend. After being calmed down by the police, the friend admitted that after Nicholas left, he went straight to bed. He also revealed that he knew Nicholas had planned to steal his parents' car, but did not expect him to get stuck in the car or harm his family. The police then spoke to Nicholas again and shared new statements from his friends. This time, Nicholas claimed that he had left his friend's house and returned home to get his car later, at around 1 a.m. He changed his story again, stating that the lights were on when he arrived, but were off when he woke up. He assumed this meant that the robbers had entered the house while he was there. Nicholas still insisted that he had fallen asleep in his car. But how could he have slept after hearing 4 gunshots? This time, Nicholas said he had woken up at around 5 a.m. when his friend called him. Instead of returning to his parents' house, he went back to his friend's house without his car. Although Nicholas was increasingly under suspicion, he tried to remain calm. At times, he even laughed and joked during conversations, which the police interpreted as an attempt to mislead them. Nicholas appeared innocent, but the police believed there was something much more sinister behind his facade. When Nicholas eventually returned home with his friends, they entered the house through the garage. Nicholas invited his friends inside, which seemed unusual. Once inside, Nicholas pointed out that the garage door was open, which he found strange since his family always kept it closed. According to his friend's father, Nicholas repeatedly emphasized this to everyone present before they entered. As they walked through the living room, Nicholas led the way. He was the first to see his father lying on the couch, covered in blood. Shocked, Nicholas shouted to the others. His friend saw the body but immediately ran outside, refusing to go any further. During questioning, Nicholas confirmed all of these details. What worried the police most was the calm, emotionless way he spoke about everything, which was highly unusual for someone grieving the loss of a family member. When this story became public, people were shocked and tried to understand what had happened to Nicholas's family. Later, in his defense, Nicholas admitted that the car keys had been in his coat pocket the entire time. He remembered them when he visited his friend's house, and that was when he hatched the plan to steal the family car. The police were puzzled as to why he had not revealed this information earlier. They believed he was hiding something and lying again. Nicholas's friend stated that Nicholas had called home and asked his younger brother to leave the back door open, although the reason for this request was unclear. After this revelation, however, the police became certain that Nicholas had committed the murder of his family. He also told the police that his father owned 2 guns and had taken him hunting many times, so he was familiar with using them. Nicholas's friends revealed that he frequently had conflicts with his father, who had caught him drinking on multiple occasions. However, Nicholas claimed that a man who lived near his family was capable of such a brutal crime. He was referring to a neighbor who was a drug user and had a history of legal trouble. The police, however, believed this was an attempt to shift blame and divert suspicion from himself. There was no evidence against the neighbor, and he had a solid alibi. When the police publicly identified Nicholas as the prime suspect, he appeared very nervous and insisted that he was innocent. He later claimed that his parents were extremely cruel and that he had suffered years of mental and physical abuse at their hands. During questioning, Nicholas repeatedly asked the police if he could be treated in a psychiatric hospital instead of receiving a life sentence. The police did not give a clear answer to this question. However, Nicholas's suspicious interest played against him. Nicholas clearly realized his guilt and hopefully reduced the severity of the punishment. By the end of the interrogation, there was sufficient evidence against Nicholas, but his motives remained unclear. According to his friends, Nicholas had argued with his father shortly before the murder. He later recounted several instances in which his father had treated him harshly, even resorting to violence. Nicholas mentioned that their relationship had significantly worsened during the fall. It seems that the challenges of adolescence had a major negative impact on his behavior. His father, known for being strict, had tried to discipline and correct his son's behavior. According to Nicholas's testimony, on the day of the incident, he went to visit friends after his father had spanked him that morning for reasons Nicholas considered unreasonable. Police suspect that the punishment stemmed from the teenager's refusal to obey his parents. Friends' testimonies indicated that Nicholas, like many teenagers, had started to rebel. Tensions with his father were especially high after Nicholas was caught drinking on multiple occasions. Nicholas explained that he drank as a way to cope with his problems. Some relatives supported this claim, describing his father as a stern man. In interviews with Nicholas's classmates and close circle, police learned that the circumstances leading up to the massacre had been developing long before the actual event. However, it remains unclear why he killed his mother and younger brothers, who had not harmed him. Many classmates recalled him sharing stories about how he could no longer handle the abuse and emotional pressure from his father. While many described Nicholas as a hard-working and calm, kind student, his closest friends were aware of his darker side. Outside of school, he often beat his younger brothers, stole alcohol from his father's bar, and even took the family car without permission. Nicholas displayed troubling behavior, frequently bullying younger students and those with disabilities. Nicholas eventually broke down and confessed to killing his parents and younger brothers, though his explanation was both strange and disturbing. He claimed that during a sleepover with friends, he had returned home, sneaked in, and found his father asleep on the couch. Nicholas took a gun, contemplated his actions for about half an hour, and then decided to go through with it. He shot his father, and since everyone in the house was asleep, no one heard the gunshots. However, he did not stop there. After killing his father, he went upstairs and killed his mother before entering younger brother's room, where he also killed both of them. Nicholas admitted he killed younger brothers because they would have called the police. He explained that he had asked one of younger brothers to leave the door unlocked the day before, suggesting the murders may have been premeditated. Nicholas claimed he shot his family members in the head to ensure they would not suffer lasting pain. He then led police to the location of the murder weapon, which he had hidden in bushes on his family's property. Ballistic tests confirmed the weapon was used in the murders, and DNA evidence matching Nicholas's was found on the gun's barrel. He was eventually formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. Many people viewed Nicholas positively, so much so that after his arrest, the court received several letters pleading for leniency. One of these letters came from his grandfather, who claimed that Nicholas had endured years of physical and mental abuse from his father. Some people found it hard to believe that Nicholas could be guilty. While awaiting trial just 2 days before it began, Nicholas was in prison and made a phone call to a friend. Their conversation, which was recorded, included Nicholas joking about escaping. This behavior indicated that he felt no remorse and did not grasp the seriousness of his actions. However, during the trial, the mood changed dramatically. At one point, Nicholas burst into tears and apologized to his relatives, expressing deep remorse. The prosecution used this moment to portray him as manipulative, citing it as evidence of his two-faced nature. On the other hand, the defense argued that such a seemingly upright young man could not be a cold-blooded killer. These conflicting portrayals became a central focus of the trial. The prosecution highlighted Nicholas's darker side, supported by testimony from numerous witnesses, while the defense emphasized his positive qualities, including his involvement in the Boy Scouts and his excellent academic record. During the hearing, Nicholas became so emotional that he was unable to read his apology speech, leaving his attorney to read it for him. The defense's claim that Nicholas was insane was quickly dismissed. During interviews with the police, he had shown no signs of mental illness. Furthermore, he had no history of mental health problems or disorders. Despite this, his attorney pushed for Nicholas to be sent to a psychiatric facility that provided rehabilitation programs for juvenile offenders. The defense argued that Nicholas's motive for the crime was unconvincing. If it had been for money, he would not have been able to access it until adulthood. Killing his family would have only worsened his circumstances, potentially placing him in an orphanage or foster care. This suggested that Nicholas did not fully understand the consequences of his actions. A psychiatric evaluation was conducted, which concluded that Nicholas was mentally fit to stand trial. This ruled out the use of mental health as a defense. Since crimes like this are punishable by death under state law, Nicholas faced serious consequences. However, due to his age, he was not eligible for the death penalty. In January 2009, Nicholas finally reached a plea agreement with the prosecution. Nicholas Browning pleaded guilty to all charges, and a jury sentenced him to 4 life terms. He is currently incarcerated at a correctional facility in Cumberland, Maryland. In 2014, he requested that his sentence be reconsidered, but his request was denied. In Maryland, granting a pardon for a life sentence requires the governor's approval, which has not occurred in the state since 1994. This makes it unlikely that Nicholas will ever be released. On November 23, 2013, in Santa Cruz Harbor, California, Forrest Hayes, a prominent figure in the tech industry, was found dead. His body was located on his luxury yacht, the Escape, which he owned. He was discovered unconscious in one of the cabins, and attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. Local law enforcement responded after the yacht's captain called for help. The circumstances surrounding Forrest's death were puzzling. He was lying on his back with no signs of struggle. An injection mark was visible on his arm, but no syringe or medical supplies were found nearby, raising questions about whether his death was accidental or intentional. The cabin appeared disordered. There were 2 wine glasses on a small table, one with lipstick marks, indicating he had company. All the windows were covered with curtains, and the lighting was dim, contributing to an atmosphere of privacy. The scene looked strangely staged, yet there were no clear signs of violence. The yacht's captain told the police that Forrest often used the boat for private outings. He noted that Forrest liked spending time alone on the yacht, but he also had guests from time to time. The coroner's initial assessment indicated that an overdose could be the cause of death. However, at the start of the investigation, it was unclear if this overdose was by accident or on purpose. The lack of a syringe near the body raised further questions. To find answers, investigators began looking into Forrest's life, including his contacts, business dealings, personal relationships, and the events leading up to his death. The main question in the investigation was, who was with Forrest in the last hours of his life? The presence of a wine glass with lipstick suggested that a woman might have been involved. However, neither the captain nor the harbor staff saw anyone exit after Forrest boarded the yacht. The investigation began by examining Forrest's phone, which was found near his body. An initial review of his apps and messages did not show anything suspicious, but detectives chose to look deeper into his personal life. As they explored Forrest's connections and habits, it became clear that his seemingly perfect life could be hiding unexpected secrets. Uncovering these secrets became a key goal for law enforcement as they sought to understand what happened aboard the Escape that tragic evening. Forrest Hayes was born on May 10, 1962, in Dearborn, Michigan. From a young age, he showed exceptional learning abilities. His curiosity, problem-solving skills, and natural charisma made him a leader among his peers. Teachers and classmates often praised his dynamic personality and commitment to excellence, which set the stage for his future success. After graduating from high school, Forrest attended a prestigious university where he studied engineering and computer science. He quickly mastered the latest technologies and began developing his own projects, which caught the attention of major tech companies. His career took off in the early 1980s, during the early growth of the information technology industry. A key moment in Forrest's career occurred when he joined Apple in 2005. At that time, Apple was rapidly expanding and working on innovative products like the iPhone and iPad. Forrest took a position in a crucial department focused on developing new technologies. His contributions to Apple's projects were so impactful that he quickly gained the respect of both his colleagues and the leadership team. Forrest was not just a skilled professional, he was also an innovator with a unique ability to find unconventional solutions to challenging problems, making him an invaluable team member. Colleagues remembered Forrest's unwavering determination to implement innovative ideas that improved the functionality and accessibility of Apple's products. During his time at Apple, he worked on technologies that later became industry standards. However, he didn't rest on his successes and soon accepted a position at Google, joining the company in 2007. At Google, he became part of Google X, a division focused on developing advanced technologies. His role involved overseeing projects related to autonomous vehicles, smart devices, and other innovative advancements. Notably, he contributed to the creation of self-driving vehicle systems, a significant breakthrough in autonomous transportation. Colleagues described Forrest Hayes as an inspiring leader who motivated his team to reach ambitious goals. He was strict but fair, promoting a positive work environment. Forrest embraced challenging tasks, which earned him the respect and admiration of his colleagues. His ability to blend strategic thinking with attention to detail enabled him to successfully lead large-scale projects that shaped the future of technology. Forrest's professional success was closely connected to his family life. In 1996, he married Denise Hayes. Together they built a strong relationship based on understanding and support. They had 5 children: Lauren, Danielle, Lily, Roscoe, and Zosia. Forrest was not only a successful businessman but also a dedicated father. Even with a busy work schedule, he always prioritized his family. Those who knew him said he loved spending time with his children, planning family trips, and creating traditions that brought them closer. Their family life seemed joyful. They living in a $4 million home in one of California's finest neighborhoods, which offered a peaceful and comfortable environment. Forrest's biggest joy came from outings on his yacht, the escape. To him, the yacht represented family togetherness. He regularly took his family on short trips, enjoying quality time and relaxation away from the busy city life. Friends and colleagues admired how he balanced his career success with his family commitments. He exemplified the ability to manage both professional achievements and personal responsibilities. Although Forrest appeared outwardly harmonious, he sometimes shared with close friends that he felt empty inside. He had accomplished everything he had ever dreamed of, yet it didn't fully satisfy him. This sense of restlessness may have pushed him to pursue new experiences and interests, ultimately resulting in tragic outcomes. A key part of Forrest's secret life was his use of the app Seeking Arrangement. This platform connects wealthy individuals with younger partners for informal relationships that often involve financial support. Forrest actively used the app, and an investigation into his account showed that he had been messaging many women, setting up meetings, and negotiating the terms of their interactions. His relationships were not just casual. Forrest was known for generously supporting his partners by covering their expenses, giving them expensive gifts, and meeting in private settings. One such location was his yacht, which originally served as a family vessel for short trips but later became a personal getaway for him and the women he met through the app. The yacht offered the privacy, allowing him to avoid unwanted attention. The captain of the yacht, employed by Forrest, later informed the police that it was frequently used for these meetings. He recalled that Forrest sometimes took women on short trips or spent several hours alone with them on board. The captain noted that these encounters happened often but were covered by a confidentiality agreement. Alcohol was typically involved, and in some cases, illegal substances were also present. Messages found on Forrest's phone showed he discussed acquiring these substances, and occasionally, his partners would bring them at his request. This information shocked his colleagues and family, who were completely unaware of his secret life. Investigators paid special attention to a woman Forrest had met through Seeking Arrangement. A week before his death, he arranged to meet her on his yacht, where they spent the evening drinking wine and using substances that made Forrest feel unwell. In messages after their meeting, Forrest acknowledged he wasn't feeling well but expressed no desire to stop these activities. Forrest lived two distinct lives. In one, he was a dedicated husband, father, and respected professional. In the other, he sought excitement and a break from his daily routine. His colleagues and friends were unaware of this hidden side of him, and his family believed his yacht trips were simply a way for him to manage stress. These private meetings, which Forrest viewed as a release from his demanding job, ultimately had tragic consequences. The yacht, once a symbol of his achievement and independence, became the place where his two lives intersected, leading to his untimely death. This situation forced both investigators and Forrest's loved ones to reevaluate their perception of a man they had believed was perfect. Alex Tichelman was born on April 8, 1987, in Canada. Her biological parents are unknown because she was adopted by Leslie Ann and Bart Tichelman at a young age. They provided her with a stable and loving home, along with financial security. Leslie Ann worked in retail, while Bart held an executive position at a major company, which gave the family a respected social status. Alex grew up in a joyful environment. She thrived in school, particularly in literature, and aspired to become a writer. Her teachers appreciate her creativity and imagination. Besides her academic success, she enjoyed sports and actively participated in school competitions. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments, invested in her education, and supported her dreams. During her adolescence, Alex started experiencing a range of problems. At 14, she randomly tried cannabis, which led her to gradually engage in more risky behaviors. Initially, she experimented with lighter substances, but by 16, she had begun using harder drugs. This shift had a significant impact on her life. She began to skip school, quit sports, and distance herself from her parents. Leslie Ann and Bart worked hard to support their daughter. They consulted psychologists and took her to counseling, but things only got worse. In a last-ditch effort to help her, they sent Alex to a private rehabilitation school in Maine that had a strict approach for dealing with troubled teens. They hoped that being away from her usual surroundings would help her get back on track. Unfortunately, Her time at the school did not yield the desired results. Alex struggled to adjust and soon returned home, where she reverted to her old habits. By the age of 18, Alex had left school. She explored different career paths, including journalism, but quickly lost interest. Her progress was repeatedly hindered by her battles with substance abuse. This addiction made it difficult for her to build a personal or professional life. In 2010, Alex moved to San Francisco, hoping to start fresh in the entertainment industry. She created a YouTube channel to share makeup tutorials and her daily life, but the project did not succeed, leading to more disappointment. In search of a way to distinguish herself, she ventured into modeling. However, she found that the conventional modeling standards did not fit her, so she decided to focus on fetish photography. She took part in BDSM-style photo shoots that emphasized shock and provocation. While this choice helped her connect with an audience, it did not provide her with financial stability. Alex continued to struggle with her addictions, living from one job to another and facing ongoing challenges. In 2011, Alex started using the Seeking Arrangement platform to connect with wealthy partners who could offer her financial support and a more luxurious lifestyle. Through this platform, she met Forrest Hayes. Their relationship began with typical discussions about the terms of their meetings. Forrest was looking for a companion for private gatherings on his yacht, Escape. He offered financial assistance and generous gifts in return. For Alex, this was a chance to gain the stability she needed. Initially, their meetings were casual and included wine and light conversation. However, things changed when investigators found out that Forrest sometimes asked Alex to bring illegal substances to their meetings, promising her extra money for doing so. Alex saw this as a way to earn more, and as a result, their meetings became more frequent, primarily taking place on the yacht Escape. One important person in Alex Tichelman's life was Dean Riopelli, the owner of popular nightclubs in Atlanta. Their relationship began in 2011, quickly drew attention because of their significant age difference. Dean was 51, while Alex was just 24. Despite this gap, they were both fully engaged in a lively and intense lifestyle. Dean was not only a successful entrepreneur but also a dedicated rock musician. His clubs played a key role in Atlanta's music scene. His band frequently performed there. Known for his charm, energy, and love for a free-spirited lifestyle, Dean became a major influence in Alex's life, who was seeking both stability and affirmation. Their relationship was filled with the wild excitement typical of rock and roll, including party. However, beneath this glamorous exterior, there were significant conflicts. Dean's friends and colleagues observed that Alex often triggered arguments. Her impulsive behavior, worsened by alcohol and substance use, made their relationship unstable. In September 2013, just weeks before the unfortunate incident involving Forrest Hayes, Alex reported Dean to the police, claiming he was aggressive. However, when the officers arrived, they discovered a different story. Witnesses stated that Alex was acting erratically that night. She had drunk too much alcohol, created a disturbance at a club, and even attacked Dean, including biting his finger and leaving marks. Consequently, Alex was charged with filing a false report and assault. This situation illustrated the ongoing tension in their relationship, which, despite hints of affection, was deteriorating due to persistent conflicts. A few weeks later, on September 24, 2013, Dean was found unconscious in his home. Alex called emergency services, stating that he had collapsed after a long night of partying. She said she had briefly gone to the bathroom. When she returned, she found him on the floor. Paramedics arrived and declared him dead at the scene. An autopsy indicated that the cause of death was a heart attack related to an overdose of illegal substances. However, this finding raised doubts among Dean's friends and family, who insisted that he strongly opposed banned substance use and avoided even basic painkillers. Their belief made the official death ruling seem inconsistent. Despite their concerns, the case was closed due to lack of evidence of foul play. Dean's death, initially deemed accidental, came back into the spotlight in 2014 when Alex was arrested in connection with the case of Forrest Hayes. During the investigation, police found similarities between the two cases. the substances linked to Forrest's death were the same as those found in Dean's system. This discovery led to the reopening of Dean's case. Additionally, Alex's mysterious social media posts heightened suspicions. Dean's family supported the reopening of the case, arguing that the original investigation was too superficial. They believed Alex's involvement with illegal substances indicated that she might have played a role in Dean's death, but no solid evidence was ever found to connect her directly to the incident. Despite the renewed investigation, Dean's case remains officially closed, and Alex's suspected involvement has never been proven. This uncertainty continues to leave unanswered questions. Investigators were able to piece together the events from the night Forrest was found dead using evidence, witness statements, and video footage from cameras on the yacht. On November 22, 2013, Forrest arrived at the yacht named Escape in the afternoon, as was his usual routine, and boarded by himself. Soon after, Alex joined him on the yacht. According to the captain, Forrest had asked the crew to leave for the evening because he wanted privacy and a relaxing night. The functioning cameras on the yacht captured footage of Forrest and Alex in the main cabin, where they were talking, laughing, and drinking wine. Alex brought a bag, which was later found to contain banned substance and syringes. As the night went on, their conversation became more informal, and Alex took out a syringe filled with a substance. She injected herself first and then offered it to Forrest, who accepted. The camera recorded the moment she injected him. Shortly after being injected, Forrest's health quickly worsened. He lost consciousness and collapsed on the couch. At first, Alex did not realize the seriousness of the situation. She kept drinking her wine and looking around the cabin. Eventually, she tried to wake Forrest by shaking him, but he did not respond. Frightened when she realized he was not waking up, Alex began to panic. She hurriedly packed her belongings, including the syringes and leftover drugs, in an effort to eliminate potential evidence. She also wiped the wine glass she had used to remove her lipstick marks, although she missed some of them. The video showed her quickly drawing the cabin curtains, checking the area to ensure no clear evidence of her was left. Afterward, Alex left the yacht without informing anyone of what had occurred, leaving Forrest unconscious on the couch. For several hours, no one checked on him. It was only later, when Forrest's worried wife reached out to the captain, that he returned to the yacht and found Forrest's lifeless body. The investigation found that Alex attempted to go into hiding after the incident. She turned off her phone and left the marina to avoid being found. However, video footage from the yacht, lipstick marks on a wine glass, fingerprints, and text messages exchanged between Forrest and Alex on his phone helped investigators reconstruct what happened. Alex's behavior on the yacht suggested she played a significant role in the tragedy. A critical question still lingered: was the injection intentional, or was it a reckless choice? Once Alex was identified as a main suspect in Forrest Hayes' death, law enforcement initiated a manhunt to find her. After the incident, Alex disappeared, which further fueled suspicions about her involvement. With her phone off and her previously active social media account silent, tracking her became increasingly difficult. Investigators developed a strategy to track down Alex using her profile on Seeking Arrangement. This app became crucial for locating her. They created a fake profile of a wealthy man looking for new companions. Despite trying to stay low-key, Alex couldn't resist the promise of financial benefit and agreed to a meeting. After several days of communication, she set up a rendezvous at a quiet location in California. When Alex arrived, she was arrested by law enforcement. The operation went smoothly. She did not resist arrest, though her demeanor was described as calm and indifferent. During the arrest, she claimed not to understand the charges against her, but she was soon formally charged with second-degree manslaughter, evidence tampering, and illegal distribution of controlled substances. The trial began in early 2014 and quickly attracted media attention because of Alex's appearance and controversial background. She became known as the beauty-turned-criminal. Her photos, past interviews, and courtroom behavior were frequently discussed. Alex maintained a calm and confident demeanor, often dressing stylishly, which elicited mixed reactions from the public. The prosecution argued that Alex was fully aware of the risks involved in her actions. They presented video evidence from the yacht showing her giving an injection to Forrest and then leaving without helping him. They claimed this showed her indifference and attempts to avoid responsibility. In contrast, Alex's defense team argued that she acted at Forrest's request, did not intend to cause harm. They maintained that his death was a tragic accident and that she left in a panic. They also pointed out that Forrest had requested the substances and consented to the injection. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some viewed Alex as a heartless criminal responsible for the death of a successful and respected man, while others saw her as a victim of circumstance, questioning the ethics of Forrest's actions, including his use of a dating app and engagement in risky behavior. In May 2015, Alex reached a plea deal with the prosecution. She admitted to involuntary manslaughter and possession of illegal substances in exchange for a shorter sentence and the chance to avoid a jury trial. Alex was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with credit for the time she had already spent incarcerated. This decision led to a renewed debate. Some people thought the sentence was too light given the situation, while others believed it was appropriate because there was no solid proof of intent to harm. After completing her sentence, Alex was deported to Canada, her birthplace, in 2017. Despite this, her name continued to appear in discussions and articles about high-profile crimes. To the public, Forrest became a representation of double lives, risky choices, and the significant consequences of reckless decisions that resulted in a tragedy affecting many people. After her release, Alex tried to rebuild her life. For a while, she stayed away from the public, avoiding media interviews and social media. A year later, she did her first major interview with a Canadian journalist through video call. In the interview, Alex appeared calm and composed, but many perceived her as emotionally detached. Her account of the events reignited controversy, sparked new discussions about her actions and their aftermath. She stated that she never meant to harm Forrest Hayes and was shocked by his death. Alex claimed that she had given him the injection at his request, insisted that she was unaware of any existing health problems he might have had. She believed that Forrest was aware of his limits, was in control of his actions. Additionally, she denied trying to hide evidence, explaining that her actions were the result of panic and poor judgment in the moment. Her statements contradicted the evidence in the case. Footage from the yacht showed Alex not only cleaning up evidence of her presence but also leaving without trying to get help. This raised further doubts about her honesty, drew sharp criticism from Forrest's family, who accused her of trying to deflect blame. Her comments about Dean Riopelli were equally controversial. In the interview, Alex described their relationship as troubled yet real, claiming she was devastated by his death. However, she avoided questions about the cause of Dean's overdose and the details of their last meeting. Her lack of response only increased suspicions among Dean's family, who had earlier called for the case to be reopened, stating that Alex's statements generated more questions than answers. The investigation into Dean Riopelli's death remains unresolved. In 2018, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office stated that the case was under review, but there have been no updates since then. Reports suggest that investigators did not find any new evidence to confirm or deny Alex's involvement, leaving Dean's family uncertain. Currently, Alex Tichelman lives in Canada and maintains a mostly private life. Her social media accounts are inactive, and journalists have had little success reaching her for comments. Some view Alex as a victim of unfortunate circumstances, while others regard her as cold and calculating, believing her actions contributed to two tragedies. The deaths of Forrest Hayes and Dean Riopelli raise many questions. Were they really accidental? What was Alex Tichelman's involvement in these tragic situations? Shannon Graves was born on November 4, 1988, in Ohio, USA. She was raised by her mother, a single mother. Everything changed when her mother met Ronnie DePaul, who became a father figure in her life. Ronnie treats her like his own daughter, and she quickly takes a liking to him. She was known for her kind heart and loving nature. In 2016, Shannon proudly earned her cosmetology license, marking a new beginning after a challenging childhood. Her friends affectionately called her Star, recognizing her free spirit, honesty, and selflessness. However, Shannon's compassionate nature sometimes led her to make poor choices in relationships. Following her mother's death, she struggled with substance abuse. Her close friends observed that she often fell for the wrong men, whether due to bad luck or her attraction to rebellious personalities. Despite these challenges, Shannon was determined to take control of her life. Her professional achievements filled her with hope for a brighter future. Unfortunately, Shannon's intuition was wrong when she became involved with Arturo Novoa. He is of Puerto Rican descent, charming and passionate about music, but he is also very secretive about his life. This secrecy likely stemmed from his lengthy criminal history, which began in 2004 with arrests for assault and property damage. A few months later, he faced charges of escaping from prison and obstructing public service. In 2006, he was charged with felony fleeing after a police chase, followed by aggravated arson charges. After serving his prison term, he was arrested again for trespassing in 2008 after being evicted from his residence. In 2010, he faced additional charges related to weapons and unlawful entry. Court records indicate that he was a man addicted to criminal activity and made a living by illegal means. When Shannon and Arturo began dating in the summer of 2016, everything seemed to be going well. She introduced him to her family and started spending more time at his home. That same year, she got a puppy, which brought her joy and companionship. During the holiday season, she celebrated with her family, enjoying food, laughter, and gift exchanges. This gathering would unknowingly be the last time the family would be together. 2 months later, while with Arturo, Shannon briefly encountered her sister, Debbie DePaul. They discussed Debbie's upcoming birthday in March, for which Shannon was already making plans. However, when the day came, she did not attend, an unusual absence. Initially, her family thought she was just busy and would arrive later, but she never came. Alarmingly, she did not call or send a message, not even to wish Debbie a happy birthday. When she also missed the Easter gathering the following month, concern grew. As time passed, her family's anxiety increased. After calling and texting several times without receiving a response, Ronnie attempted to contact Arturo. He claimed that he and Shannon had broken up and that she had moved to Cleveland with someone else. However, when Ronnie and Debbie tried to contact her directly, they were unsuccessful. Determined to find her, they went to her apartment, but found no clues. Her car and phone were there, but her beloved dog was missing. Around this time, Arturo was arrested on charges related to banned substances. In the following weeks, Shannon's family was engulfed in fear and uncertainty. In June, Debbie officially reported her as a missing person to the police. In their report, family members acknowledged Shannon's past struggles with addiction but highlighted that she had never gone this long without contacting them. Authorities requested anyone with information to come forward while they searched hospitals and jails, but there was still no trace of Shannon. Investigators found tracking her whereabouts to be extremely challenging, especially since she had been missing for months. They filed a request for her phone records and began looking into her personal life, noting that she often spent long periods of time with her boyfriend, Arturo, before her disappearance. The police subsequently interviewed Arturo. He recounted the same story he had told Ronnie, adding complexity to the case. Without a clear timeline for Shannon's disappearance, they could not confirm Arturo's alibi. Additionally, there was no evidence of a new boyfriend with whom Shannon had supposedly moved in. As suspicions rose, detectives learned about an ex-boyfriend named John, and considering this lead, they decided to investigate him further. John, a business owner, had a criminal past involving trafficking of banned substances. His incarceration had led to his breakup with Shannon, as her friends remembered how distressed she was upon learning of his conviction. Complicating matters, John had been released from prison shortly before Shannon was reported missing. When police found and interviewed him, he claimed he hadn't seen her since February, when she mentioned getting back together with Arturo. His statement implied that her relationship with Arturo may not have been as perfect as it seemed. Still, John admitted that he had lingering feelings for her at the time of their last conversation. With 2 potential suspects but no clear evidence, police were having a hard time getting their case off the ground. When Shannon's phone records were finally released, investigators hoped to glean vital information. Unfortunately, these records only confirmed that she had gone to work as usual in late February before her phone was suddenly turned off. The number had since been reassigned to someone else, and around that same time, all activity on her credit cards also came to a halt. The investigators had no idea that the answer to the case was about to emerge, but in the most frightening way. On July 30th, a man from Youngstown called 911 to report a shocking discovery. He told the operator that he had found human remains inside black garbage bags, and most disturbingly, the head was missing. Upon receiving the signal, rescue workers notified the police, who quickly arrived at the home of the caller, Kenny Eschenbaugh, and his wife, Jill. While forensic experts investigated the remains, Kenny and Jill were brought in for questioning. According to their testimony, the freezer containing the body parts belonged to a friend. A week prior, this friend had asked Kenny and Jill to store it in their basement, claiming it was filled with meat he didn't want to spoil. On July 29th, Jill decided to cook spaghetti and meatballs for dinner and thought she could use some meat from the freezer, planning to replace it later. However, when she approached the freezer, she found it locked. Assuming their friend was just being eccentric, she used a screwdriver to pry it open. To her horror, instead of meat, she found bags filled with what turned out to be human remains. Feeling nauseated, she quickly shut the freezer and called for Kenny. Together, they cautiously opened one of the bags and discovered a human foot. Since Kenny and Jill's stories matched perfectly when questioned separately, they were quickly ruled out as suspects. Investigators then turned their attention to the friend who had left the freezer in their home, named Anthony Gonzalez. Kenny explained that he had met Anthony 4 years earlier through a mutual friend, bonding over their shared interest in music. Although they hung out occasionally, Kenny found Anthony to be unpredictable and sometimes aggressive. Despite being cooperative, the identity of the victim remained a mystery until forensic experts discovered a scorpion tattoo on one of the feet, matching a tattoo belonging to Shannon, a woman who had recently disappeared. While more tests were planned, it increasingly appeared that the remains belonged to her. This left investigators with a concerning question: how and when was Shannon placed in the freezer? Shortly afterward, the lead prosecutor in Ohio held a press conference to discuss this chilling case, which was rapidly becoming one of the most disturbing in recent history. Although the medical examiner couldn't determine the cause of death without the victim's head, Shannon was positively identified through fingerprint analysis. Her family was heartbroken to learn the truth about their beloved daughter, discovering that her fate was far worse than they had ever imagined. Shannon's family and friends gathered in a local park for a candlelight vigil to remember her. Debbie, one of the attendees, told reporters that she believed Shannon has found peace. The vigil was intended to celebrate Shannon's life rather than to focus on sadness. Many people lit candles and released lanterns while wearing shirts with messages honoring Shannon. However, Shannon's family was visibly pained. Ronnie, too devastated to appear on camera, shared his indescribable grief, explaining that he loved Shannon as a daughter and sought justice for her. In the meantime, investigators ramped up the search for Anthony. They soon discovered that Anthony Gonzalez was just an alias. His real name matched the identity of someone they had already suspected, Arturo Novoa. Authorities learned that Arturo had been dating a woman named Katrina Layton, who moved into his house shortly after Shannon was last seen. Given Arturo's lengthy criminal history, the police acted quickly, arresting both him and Katrina and searching their home. The police found red stains on the walls, a knife, and a manual for the freezer where Shannon's remains were located. Kenny, who previously believed his friend's name was Anthony, was shocked to learn Arturo's true identity. He wasn't the only one confused. Arturo often used different names, possibly to conceal his past involving activities related to banned substances. During questioning, Arturo remained composed, repeatedly denying any connection to Shannon's death and claiming ignorance about her whereabouts. He also distanced himself from the freezer. Katrina supported his claims, but their story began to unravel when police discovered a key among her belongings that fit the freezer's lock, linking them to the crime and ensuring they remained in custody. As the investigation continued, Shannon's ex-boyfriend John played a crucial role in uncovering additional information. He spoke to Shannon's friends and learned about a bonfire attended by Arturo. A witness reported that Arturo used the fire to burn personal items and, when questioned, he claimed they were Shannon's clothes, which he burned as revenge for alleged infidelity. That night, he was with his friend Andrew Herman, and they both continued to burn clothing. Investigators later searched the bonfire site and found remnants, including a bracelet that belonged to Shannon. As the investigation progressed, authorities contacted a woman named Jamie, who knew Andrew and his wife, Michelle Eilenfeld. Jamie reveals that Arturo and Katrina were behind Shannon's murder, while Andrew helped handling the body of her body. Jamie stated that Katrina had harbored jealousy towards Shannon for a long time, and that Shannon felt the same way about her. The situation became more complicated when neighbors reported seeing Katrina walking Shannon's dog and using her credit card to make small purchases, suggesting that Katrina had taken over a part of her life. Amid these incidents, Ronnie passed away unexpectedly without witnessing justice. Debbie, overwhelmed with sorrow, sought therapy while caring for her younger brother and Shannon's cherished dog. Meanwhile, Andrew and Michelle were placed in pretrial detention. Authorities gathered a wealth of evidence that Michelle had threatened witnesses, interfered with the investigation, and covered up the crime. As the case went to the jury, the truth of what happened became clearer. On February 24, 2017, Arturo killed Shannon, likely with Katrina present. He later called Andrew to assist him in handling the body. They disposed of her head, stored other body parts in their freezer, and discarded some remains in an undisclosed location that authorities have yet to find. The prosecutor stated that Arturo was merely a small-time dealer of banned substances, acting out of jealousy over Shannon's finances. Katrina, on the other hand, wanted Shannon to keep her distance so she could pursue a relationship with Arturo. Facing the death penalty, the four defendants ultimately accepted plea deals. Arturo Novoa received a life sentence for murdering Shannon. Katrina Layton was sentenced to 18 years, Andrew Herman to 12 years, and Michelle Eilenfeld to 2 years. Arturo attempted to appeal his sentence, but it was upheld. To keep the memory of Shannon alive, Debbie created a social media page dedicated to her younger sister, where she frequently shares pictures of her pet dog. She frequently visits Shannon's grave, where she has established a special ritual. After cutting the grass, Debbie spray paints a large pink heart next to the headstone, which was Shannon's favorite color. In a local interview a few years later, Debbie recalled the devastating call she received about the partial discovery of Shannon's remains. Currently, the investigators who helped convict Arturo are still searching for the missing parts of Shannon's remains. Debbie remains hopeful that they will be found someday as she continues to honor her sister's memory through her dedicated online tribute. On a seemingly ordinary evening in Bolingbrook, Illinois, an unimaginable event occurred. A woman was discovered dead in her bathtub. Her hair was wet, and there was a severe gash at the back of her head. Initially, it appeared to be a tragic accident, perhaps a slip and fall, but as investigators delved deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. The most shocking revelation: the individual who may hold the key to this mystery was someone dedicated to protecting the community. What really transpired that night, and how did this case evolve into a startling tale of deception, manipulation, and betrayal? Kathleen Savio was born on June 13, 1963, in Glendale Heights, Illinois. She was the youngest of 4 siblings, was raised by her parents, Henry Jerry Savio and Mary Savio. When Kathleen was just 2 years old, her parents divorced. Later, her mother remarried, and the family moved to a different city in Illinois. Despite financial difficulties during her childhood, Kathleen was determined to create a better future for herself. She focused on her education, eventually became an accountant. Friends and acquaintances described Kathleen as warm, friendly, and charismatic, with a unique talent for connecting with others. At 20 years old, she went on a life-changing blind date with Drew Peterson. He seemed charming and was initially a great match for her. Drew worked as a police officer in the Metropolitan Area Narcotics Squad in Illinois, a job that brought him respect and authority. Drew was born on January 5, 1954, in Bolingbrook, a suburb of Chicago, and was raised by his strict parents. Drew was an older brother to two siblings. In high school, he stood out as an athlete and was known for his competitive nature. During his teenage years, he started his first serious relationship with Carol Brown. After graduating, Drew enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1974 and married Carol that same year. He was discharged in 1976 and the following year joined the police force in his hometown. Within a year, he moved to an undercover role in the Metropolitan Area Narcotics Squad, where he gained recognition. By the age of 25, he was named Police Officer of the Year. However, his personal life was troubled. Despite having two children, his marriage to Carol ended in 1980 when she found out he was unfaithful. Carol received custody of their kids. Known for his arrogance, Drew often boasted to friends about how easily he attracted women. In 1981, he met Victoria Vicky Connolly, and they married in 1982. Their marriage lasted almost 10 years until Victoria decided to divorce him in 1992, citing ongoing domestic abuse as the main reason. This claim was later supported by her daughter, Lisa Ward, who lived with them from ages 8 to 18. She reported physical and psychological abuse from Drew. Until later, a troubling rumor from their marriage involved an incident after they purchased a bar together. One night, after leaving the bar, Victoria was in a car accident that required surgery. Some sources suggested that Drew might have tampered with her brakes, but no solid evidence came to light. During his marriage to Victoria, Drew began an affair with Kathleen Savio, who was unaware of his marriage. To Kathleen, Drew appeared to be the perfect partner. He showered her with gifts and affection, took her on trips, promised her a stable future. Moved by his attention, she quickly fell in love with him. When Drew eventually told her he was going through a divorce, he portrayed his wife as a banned substance addict and claimed he could no longer handle the situation. Their romance accelerated rapidly, leading to their engagement just 6 months after their first date. On May 3, 1992, shortly after Drew finalized his divorce, they got married. Over the next 2 years, Kathleen gave birth to their 2 children, but their relationship began to change. While she focused on raising their family, Drew sought excitement outside the home. What began as a loving relationship turned unhealthy. Drew's charming exterior vanished, revealing a controlling and abusive nature. At first, his mistreatment was verbal. He insulted Kathleen's appearance, calling her unattractive and making hurtful comments about her weight. As time passed, his behavior became increasingly harmful, trapping Kathleen in a marriage that was far from the fairy tale she had imagined. Drew's aggression intensified. One day, Kathleen, feeling frustrated and tired from his continual absence and lack of support with their children, confronted him. What began as a heated argument quickly escalated into violence. Drew grabbed her arm and pushed her into a table, causing her to sustain a head injury and multiple bruises. The injuries were serious enough for her to go to the emergency room. Although the hospital recorded the incident, Drew publicly denied any wrongdoing. In a televised interview, he claimed that, as a police officer, he needed to act differently than an ordinary citizen to protect his job. Kathleen decided to stay in her marriage despite the challenges. Meanwhile, Drew turned his attention to a new relationship with a much younger woman named Stacy and Callis, who was nearly 30 years his junior. He was even bringing Stacy to the home that he shared with Kathleen and their children. On at least one occasion, he spent the night with her in the basement while his family slept upstairs. Stacy, born on January 20, 1984, in Downers Grove, Illinois, graduated high school early and began working as a receptionist at a local hotel where she and Drew first met. For a time, Kathleen was unaware of the affair, but that changed in October 2001 when she received an anonymous letter that revealed Drew's involvement with 19-year-old Stacy. Although Kathleen's marriage had been struggling, this news devastated her. She confronted Drew, who denied the affair. Distraught, Kathleen called her sister, crying as she shared that not only had Drew cheated on her, but he had also physically assaulted her during an argument by throwing her against the refrigerator. By mid-2002, Drew had moved out of their home and into a new house just a few blocks away, which many viewed as a deliberate act to provoke Kathleen. The divorce was quite tense as Kathleen fought over custody, child support, and her share of Drew's pension. However, Drew was unwilling to compromise. Kathleen was a strong and devoted mother who refused to back down easily. Their disputes escalated, leading to the police being called to her home at least 18 times, each report documenting domestic arguments. One particularly alarming incident occurred on July 5, 2002. According to the police report, Drew broke glass in the house and then forced Kathleen to sit on the staircase for hours while he stood over her, brandishing a knife and threatening her life. Kathleen felt increasingly unsafe, especially since Drew was a police officer in the same department that handled her complaints. As a result, her reports were often dismissed as typical domestic issues, and no serious action was taken against him. Fearing for her safety, Kathleen sought legal protection. On November 14, 2002, she wrote a letter to the state's assistant prosecutor describing Drew's worsening violence, urgently requested an emergency protection order before it was too late. She warned that Drew knew how to exploit the system and that she feared for her children's safety as well as her own. Despite the urgency of her message, her requests were ignored. Kathleen felt helpless, alone with her children, and trapped in a perilous situation. Drew officially married Stacy on October 18, 2003, shortly after finalizing his divorce. At 49 years old, he married a 19-year-old. Soon after, Stacy gave birth to their first child. Initially, she seemed happy in her role as a stepmother, even though Drew's eldest child was not much younger than she was. Their life looked ideal. They traveled often, hosted extravagant parties, and portrayed themselves as a loving couple despite their significant age difference. However, the initial bliss did not last. Drew's controlling behavior re-emerged, and he became obsessive towards Stacy, monitoring her phone, tracking her movements, and making unfounded accusations. Then, on the night of Monday, March 1, 2004, a worried neighbor knocked on Kathleen's door several times without getting a response. Concerned, the neighbor decided to check inside and made a shocking discovery. Savio's nude body was found in the bathtub in the master bedroom of the Pheasant Chase Drive mansion. Naturally, Drew became the primary suspect, but he had a solid alibi. He was home with Stacy. He also stated that, as agreed, he had spent the previous weekend with his children and returned them to Kathleen on Sunday. Forensic investigators found no signs of forced entry or struggle in the home. Although Kathleen's autopsy showed bruises as well as a large, unexplained gash on her scalp, there were no defensive injuries. Authorities quickly classified her death as an accidental drowning without conducting a more thorough investigation. A significant detail was overlooked: the bathtub was completely dry when her body was discovered, raising further suspicions. The lead detective in the case was a close friend of Drew's, and his so-called interrogation of Drew resembled more of a casual chat between friends than an official inquiry. Stacy, supporting her husband, confirmed his alibi by claiming they had spent the entire weekend at home with their children. Kathleen's family was heartbroken by her unexpected death. Just days later, they held a touching memorial, honoring her as a devoted mother and a kind person. Shortly after this, Drew was awarded full custody of the two children he had with Kathleen. Stacy officially adopted them, creating the impression of a happy blended family. However, the facade of a perfect marriage soon crumbled. As time went on, Drew's controlling behavior became increasingly evident. By 2007, Stacy was fed up with his oppressive ways and seriously contemplated divorce. Then, on October 28 of that year, she disappeared without any explanation. Her sudden vanishing shocked her family, as Stacy had never shown any signs that she would willingly leave without informing anyone. Stacy's family began a desperate search for her and refused to give up until she was found. In contrast, Drew displayed little concern throughout the search process. During interviews, he made dismissive and sarcastic comments, implying that Stacy was merely enjoying attention and likely out dancing or with another man. Stacy's family suspected Drew might be involved, especially since she had recently told him she wanted a divorce, something he was unwilling to accept. As their suspicions grew, Drew tried to change the narrative by claiming that Stacy had changed a lot since her sister's death in 2006. He stated that she had been struggling emotionally and receiving treatment for depression. However, Rather than clearing his name, these claims only heightened the investigators' concerns. Authorities began to question whether Kathleen's death was really accidental or if something more sinister was at play. Just weeks after Stacy went missing, both the Illinois State Police and the FBI reopened the investigation into Kathleen's death. In November 2007, Kathleen's body was exhumed for a second autopsy, which revealed findings that contradicted the original report. Forensic experts discovered clear signs of a struggle, indicating that she had fought for her life. As a result, Drew becomes the prime suspect in both the death of his third wife and the disappearance of his fourth wife. Instead of staying out of the spotlight, he actively sought media attention, appearing on talk shows and making arrogant, sarcastic comments as if he relished the notoriety. In January 2008, the case took a surprising turn when Drew's brother, Thomas Morphy, came forward with important information. He claimed that he helped Drew remove a large blue container from their house around the time Stacy disappeared. Several neighbors backed up his account, stating they had seen Drew with the container. Additionally, Thomas disclosed that he had assisted Drew in making a phone call from Stacy's phone, which made it look like she was at the airport shortly after her vehicle was found abandoned there. As the search for Stacy continued, the investigation into Kathleen's death advanced. On February 21, 2008, her death was officially reclassified from an accident to a homicide. About a year later, Drew was arrested as the main suspect. His legal team argued that they had a strong defense due to the absence of physical evidence, such as fingerprints, DNA, or eyewitness accounts linking him directly to the crime. As the trial progressed, accusations arose against the police department, with many claiming that Drew, having been a sergeant there, received preferential treatment and that the initial investigation was mishandled. This raised serious concerns about the integrity of law enforcement, suggesting issues of corruption and cover-ups. Exposing institutional bias alone did not establish Drew's guilt in Kathleen's murder. The prosecution needed a significant breakthrough. That turning point came when the lead prosecutor executed a strategic legal move that transformed the case. On May 31, 2012, Drew Peterson's trial began. The first witness was Kathleen's sister, Susan M. Savio. Her testimony deeply affected everyone in the courtroom as she recounted that Kathleen had confided in her about Drew threatening to kill her and make it look like an accident to avoid suspicion. Next, Neil Scory, a pastor and marriage counselor who had worked with Stacy, took the stand. He testified that Stacy had privately expressed her concerns that Drew was responsible for Kathleen's death. He recalled that Stacy once woke up in the middle of the night to find Drew missing around the time Kathleen was believed to have died. When Drew returned, he allegedly asked Stacy to lie to the police and provide him with an alibi. Further unsettling details emerged in court, including the fact that Drew had been present during Stacy's police interview, suggesting that he had pressured her to protect him. Additionally, the attorney who represented Stacy during her divorce revealed that Stacy had reached out to him just days before her disappearance, seeking legal advice about leaving Drew, and made it clear she believed he had killed Kathleen. Prosecutors claimed that Drew killed Kathleen out of fear that their divorce would leave him broke. For 3 weeks, jurors heard from 44 witnesses who shared disturbing accounts of Kathleen's case. One friend mentioned that Kathleen was so scared of Drew that she kept a knife under her bed for protection. After considering all the evidence, which was mostly circumstantial and based on witness statements, the jury, made up of 7 men and 5 women, deliberated for about 14 hours. Before the jury's decision was announced, Drew shouted that he was innocent. This caused Kathleen's brother to retaliate, accusing Drew of Kathleen's murder. Security had to step in to remove him from the courtroom. Ultimately, on September 6, 2012, Drew Peterson convicted of murdering Savio. On February 21, 2013, sentencing him to 38 years in prison with no chance of parole. Though he appeared calm during the trial, Drew's attitude changed in the following days. He directed his anger at the prosecutor who helped convict him. The prosecutor, however, remained unshaken and suggested that there might be further legal actions regarding Stacy's disappearance. Tensions escalated within Drew's legal team as his lead attorney filed an appeal, claiming that the original defense team had mishandled the trial. They argued that Drew was pressured into starting a media campaign before the trial, which ultimately harmed his defense. They also criticized the choice to call Stacy's divorce attorney as a witness, a decision that proved disastrous. Despite Drew's numerous attempts to overturn the verdict, the ruling remained intact. Kathleen achieved justice, but the fate of Stacy continued to be a perplexing mystery, with many believing that Drew Peterson held the key to the answers. While serving his sentence, Drew faced a new and shocking allegation. He was recorded in prison discussing a plan to arrange a murder for hire against the prosecutor who had led his case. He offered money to another inmate in exchange for carrying out the attack. In May 2016, he was found guilty of solicitation of murder and solicitation of murder for hire. He was subsequently sentenced to an additional 40 years in prison. Over time, Drew has maintained his innocence and persistently sought to appeal his conviction, arguing that the testimonies used during his trial violated his constitutional rights. In 2024, a significant legal development occurred when Drew's public defender requested a psychological evaluation to pursue a new trial. The judge instructed the county to conduct and finance the evaluation for Drew, who is now 70 years old. After a mandatory 30-day assessment period, the results showed that he was mentally competent to stand trial. At the same time, Drew's former attorney faced legal issues of his own, as he was charged with contempt of court. This situation arose when he allegedly breached a gag order by discussing the case in a nationally televised interview. During this interview, he claimed to have information that could clarify the circumstances surrounding Stacy's case. Although the lawyer denied the allegations, the judge reaffirmed the gag order, prohibiting him from publicly addressing the case. In the same year, Drew's eldest son, Stephen Paul Peterson, who became a police officer like his father, spoke out. He referred to Drew as his hero, highlighting that his father had always supported him and his brother. However, he confessed that dealing with the circumstances of Drew's conviction was extremely painful, making it hard for him to reconcile the loving father he had known for 36 years with the man accused of such terrible crimes. As for Drew's numerous appeals, none had been successful by that time. Stacy remained missing, and her family continued to hope that her body would eventually be found. They firmly believed that Drew was responsible for her disappearance and should be held accountable. This case generated significant public debate throughout the United States because of its many concerning elements. At its center was a police officer, an individual committed to protecting the public, who instead posed a threat to those around him. The chilling saga of Kathleen Savio's murder and Stacy Peterson's disappearance revealed a harrowing tale of abuse, manipulation, and betrayal orchestrated by Drew Peterson, a police officer entrusted with public safety. While Kathleen's justice was secured through a hard-fought conviction, Stacy's fate remains an unresolved mystery, leaving her family in anguished hope for answers. This case, marked by institutional failures and Peterson's brazen defiance, underscores the devastating consequences of unchecked power and the enduring pursuit of truth that continues to honor the memories of Kathleen and Stacy. The Jacobson family seemed to have it all: wealth, success, and a beautiful home in Wellington, Florida. They appeared to be the ideal loving family. However, appearances can be misleading. Behind the facade of their perfect life lay a much darker reality. What was meant to be a joyful birthday celebration for their two young boys turned into a devastating event, leading to a tragedy so profound that the entire nation would remember their names. To fully grasp this story, we need to go back to 1989 when Neil Jacobson met Frankie at a gym in Bayside, Queens, New York, where they both lived and worked. They are ambitious and successful in their careers. Frankie was making her mark at Lehman Brothers, a leading firm in finance, while Neil had established his own boutique firm on Long Island. They were young, driven, and aspiring to achieve the American dream. Those who knew them praised their relationship as one filled with deep admiration and affection. Frankie was entirely devoted to Neil. In turn, he was seen as a charismatic and kind man with immense potential. Within his family and social circles, he was often regarded as a golden boy, intelligent, charming, and seemingly unstoppable. Together, Neil and Frankie appeared to be the perfect couple. They soon took the next step in their relationship by getting married and moving into Neil's home in New Jersey. Transitioning into married life was easy for them. Together, they created a comfortable, rewarding life filled with shared interests and adventures. They did everything, enjoying activities like biking, scuba diving, and weekend trips to the countryside, which helped strengthen their bond. To an outside observer, their life seemed perfect. However, amidst their seemingly ideal marriage, they felt something was missing: children. They desperately wanted to start a family, but the path to parenthood was challenging. For years, they endured the painful reality of infertility, going through multiple fertility treatments that brought both hope and disappointment. Despite the emotional toll, they remained determined. Finally, in 2003, after many struggles, their dreams came true when they welcomed twin boys, Joshua and Eric. With their lives already comfortable, Frankie and Neil experienced happiness beyond what they had ever imagined. Their family felt complete, and they thrived both personally and professionally. Neil's parents, Harold and Goldie Jacobson, moved from New Jersey to Florida in 2000. Although they loved their new home, they missed being close to their son and his family. They often expressed their frustration about the distance and wished for more time with their grandchildren. In 2005, Harold was diagnosed with cancer, and his health deteriorated rapidly, making it impossible for him to travel to New Jersey. This situation was a turning point for Neil. Being far from his father during such a critical time was too much to bear. He decided to move his family to Florida to be closer to his parents. Before the move, Neil had already started investing in real estate in Florida. He bought a pre-construction condo in Lantana and then a second one shortly after. Real estate quickly became an obsession for him, leading to the purchase of a third condo. Despite recognizing that he was stretching himself financially, he was drawn in by the booming market. Frankie, however, was concerned about his investments and questioned their practicality. Nonetheless, Neil was resolute in his decision and was not willing to change his plans. With his properties piling up in Florida, Neil began pushing Frankie to relocate. She was resistant, hesitant to leave behind the life they had built in New Jersey. She loved their home, their community, and the stability they had created. But as time passed, the financial strain of maintaining their New Jersey home became overwhelming. Eventually, Frankie reluctantly agreed to the move. The Jacobsons officially settled in Florida, eager to start a new chapter close to family. However, things did not go as planned. Neil had hoped to sell their New Jersey home before the move, but the market wasn't in his favor. Just 2 months after they arrived in Florida, tragedy struck. Harold Jacobson passed away. The loss of his father devastated Neil in ways he hadn't expected. He had uprooted his entire life to be closer to Harold, only to lose him so soon after arriving. The grief weighed heavily on him, and his mother, Goldie, later revealed that Neil had struggled with his mental health from a young age. She recalled that as a teenager, he had been diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder, an issue that had plagued him for years. Doctors had noted that Neil had an overwhelming desire to be the perfect child, a pressure that followed him into adulthood. As the years passed, his struggles with anxiety only grew, and soon, things took an even darker turn. The Great Recession hit Florida hard, and Neil, who worked as a mortgage broker. The real estate market collapsed, and the once thriving business that had allowed him to invest so freely was now crumbling beneath him. The financial security he had worked so hard to build was slipping away. As the weight of his losses grew heavier, so did the cracks in his once stable world. The Florida condos he had invested in before relocating were quickly turning into a financial nightmare. Burdened with subprime mortgages, their payments increased month after month, stretching his resources thin. At first, Neil had convinced himself that things would turn around. He had always been a problem solver, always finding ways to make things work. But this time, no amount of determination could keep the walls from closing in. With little to no work coming in, and 4 separate mortgages draining their finances. At first, Neil and Frankie tried to hold on, dipping into their savings to stay afloat. But as time passed, their financial situation only worsened. Bills piled up, debt collectors began calling, and the stress of trying to keep everything together was pushing Neil to his limits. Desperate for a solution, he started making risky financial decisions, one bad choice after another, each one digging them deeper into a hole. He chased after risky investments, sought out loans, all in a futile attempt to stop the inevitable collapse. Eventually, the weight of it all became too much to bear. The financial juggling act had run its course. Frankie was exhausted and drained, made the painful decision to stop paying the mortgages on their 3 Florida condos. It was a move that felt like surrender, but they had no choice. There was simply no more money left to give. By the year 2008, the pressure of Neil's business failures had begun to take a serious toll on his health. At first, it started with minor complaints, aches and pains that he couldn't quite explain, but as time went on, his symptoms worsened. He became sluggish, struggling to muster the energy for even the most basic tasks. His body felt heavy, and his mind clouded. He experienced random bouts of dizziness that left him feeling unstable, and he found himself unable to focus the way he used to. Concerned, he visited the family doctor, who ordered a blood test. In October, the results were troubling. Neil had elevated hormone levels, but there was no immediate explanation for his decline. As the weeks passed, his condition only worsened. The once energetic and determined man was now lethargic, withdrawn, barely functioning. He was eventually diagnosed with depression and transient peripheral vertigo, a condition that further contributed to his constant dizziness. In an attempt to help him cope, his doctor prescribed Zoloft, a common antidepressant. Neil, desperate to feel better, took the medication as prescribed, hoping it would offer some relief. But instead of improving, his mental state deteriorated further. A few days after starting Zoloft, he was called back to the doctor's office, where they added a prescription for Xanax. It was meant to ease his anxiety, but his family and friends quickly noticed that something wasn't right. Instead of stabilizing his mood, the medication seemed to send him spiraling even further into darkness. His paranoia intensified, his emotions became more erratic, and Neil they had once known began to fade before their eyes. Neil's sister, Deborah, became deeply concerned about her brother's rapid decline. She confided in their mother, worried about what he was going through. According to Deborah, Neil had started experiencing terrifying hallucinations. He had grown increasingly paranoid, convinced that someone or something was out to get him. Frankie, his wife, was just as alarmed. She desperate for support as Neil's behavior became more and more disturbing. He had completely withdrawn from the world, he refused to go outside, stopped engaging with friends and family, and even neglected his own hygiene. There were days when he wouldn't even shower, lost in a haze of fear and depression. His paranoia took a terrifying turn when he became obsessed with the idea that the FBI was watching him. He was convinced that federal agents were surveilling him, gathering evidence to have him arrested. He would talk about it constantly, warning anyone who would listen that they were building a case against him. His delusions became more elaborate. He was certain that his phone was tapped, that his home was under surveillance, and that at any moment, the authorities would storm in, take him away. His mother saw the full extent of his paranoia. One of the last times she visited him, Neil pulled her aside, his voice shaking with fear. He told her he was in big trouble, insisting that the FBI was coming for him, that he had done something terrible, though he couldn't seem to explain exactly what. The fear in his eyes was real, raw, and overwhelming. As Neil's mind unraveled, January 23, 2010. The darkness he had been wrestling with for months finally took over, and what happened next would shock everyone who had ever known him. That morning, Neil stood before his wardrobe, fumbling with the top shelf, his hands shaking as he retrieved a loaded gun. His wife, Frankie, still groggy from sleep, watched in confusion, not yet realizing the horror that was unfolding before her. Neil, with the gun in hand, stepped out of the wardrobe, his face hardening into something almost unrecognizable. Frankie's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit her. In an instant, panic took over. She leapt toward him, struggling desperately to wrest the weapon from his grasp. They tumbled to the floor, the fight becoming a chaotic blur of screams, desperation, and tears. In the midst of the struggle, Neil, in a violent frenzy, struck Frankie, knocking out her front tooth and slicing her finger. Despite the brutality of it all, Frankie didn't give up. She fought with all her strength, but Neil was too much, overpowering her in his disturbed state. With cold detachment, he stood, reloaded the gun, and turned the weapon on her. 2 shots rang out one after another, each striking her in the face, silencing her forever. But Neil's twisted path didn't end there, covered in Frankie's blood. He reloaded the gun and made his way to his son Eric's room. Eric, who had been lying on his stomach in peaceful sleep, was the next victim in the nightmare that Neil had somehow constructed in his mind. 2 bullets tore through Eric's body, but against all odds, the boy survived the first 2 shots. However, Neil was undeterred, his mind fixated on finishing what he had started. He grabbed a pillow and pressed it over Eric's face, ensuring his son wouldn't survive. 2 more shots, and Eric was gone. The house was eerily still now as Neil moved toward the next room, where his youngest son Joshua was sleeping. Joshua, blissfully unaware of the carnage around him, lay curled in his sheets. Neil's actions were methodical, almost as if he were following a script. He covered his son's face with a pillow, silencing him with 2 shots to the face. In a matter of moments, the vibrant lives of his family had been extinguished, with the blood of his wife and children staining his hands. Neil walked to the bathroom and turned on the shower. He stood under the water, numb, as if washing away the sins he could no longer escape. When the shower ended, he dressed, swallowed a cocktail of Vicodin and Xanax, in a haze, left his home. As he drove, the pills began to take effect, making him groggy and disoriented. Less than a mile from his mother's house, Neil passed out behind the wheel, swerving off the road and coming to a stop in the grass. Neil had initially planned to kill his mother next before taking his own life. But in his twisted state, something inside him held him back. He later told the police that when he was at home, standing in a living room, he thought about going to heaven to be with his father, but he couldn't leave his mother alone, so he planned to take her with him. Thankfully, he never made it to her house. When the police found him, Neil was disoriented, barely conscious, and gripping the gun beside him. As they approached, he muttered, "I killed my family," in a dazed and broken voice. The investigation raised many questions. Was Neil a victim of the side effects of his medications, or had he planned this horrific act all along? A suicide note found later suggested that Neil may have been preparing for this moment, leaving many to wonder whether he was driven by his medications or if he had, at some point, simply snapped. His attorney's defense centered around his mental state. They argued that he had been suffering from severe depression, anxiety, and paranoia, all of which had been worsened by the medications he was taking. They described Neil overwhelmed by financial ruin, haunted by the fear that the FBI was watching him, and convinced that there was no way out. His legal team insisted that he had not acted out of hatred or rage but had instead been driven to an unimaginable breaking point due to the side effects of his prescription drugs. To support their argument, the defense brought in medical experts who testified about the dangers of Zoloft and Xanax, the 2 medications Neil had been prescribed before the murders. These drugs, they explained, could cause extreme mood swings, hallucinations, and suicidal tendencies, especially when taken together in high doses. Neil's behavior before the killings, his paranoia, delusions, and refusal to leave the house, was presented as clear evidence that he had lost his grip on reality. His lawyers pushed the narrative that Neil had been a loving father and husband, a man who had never shown any signs of violence before, making it hard to believe that he had killed his family intentionally. But the prosecution had a different story to tell. They painted Neil not as a victim of medication but as a desperate man who had methodically planned the murders. They argued that his financial troubles had reached a boiling point, and that instead of facing them, he had chosen to take his family's lives in an act of ultimate control. They pointed to the way he had executed the killings, retrieving his gun, reloading it multiple times, and ensuring that no one survived. To them, this was not the act of a man lost in a haze of confusion but one who had made a deliberate and calculated decision. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence against Neil was the suicide note found in his home. The note indicated that he had thought through his actions and accepted what he was about to do. It wasn't the frantic scribblings of someone in the middle of a psychotic episode. It was organized, reflective in the prosecution's view, proof of premeditation. If he had truly been unaware of his actions, why would he have left behind such a message? The prosecution also called witnesses to testify about Neil's behavior leading up to the murders. His sister, Deborah, had noticed a dramatic shift in his personality. He had become increasingly paranoid. His wife, Frankie, had confided in Deborah that Neil was no longer the man she had married. He had stopped showering, refused to leave the house, and seemed trapped in his own mind. While the defense used these accounts to argue that Neil was suffering from a mental breakdown, the prosecution used them to show that there had been warning signs, signs that should have led Neil to seek professional help instead of resorting to murder. Neil's mother, Goldie, also played a heartbreaking role in the trial. She had been one of the last people to see him before the tragedy. She recalled how Neil had told her, "Mom, I love you, no matter what happens." The courtroom fell silent. At the time, she hadn't thought much of it, but in hindsight, it was clear he had been preparing for what he was about to do. Goldie, who had always seen her son as a kind and loving man. She struggled to reconcile the Neil she knew with the one on trial for murder. As the trial progressed, the jury was left to decide whether Neil Jacobson had truly been in a state of antidepressants-induced psychosis or if he had coldly and deliberately murdered his wife and children. The prosecution emphasized that Neil had made a series of conscious choices, loading his gun, aiming at his loved ones, and pulling the trigger multiple times. They argued that no matter what struggles he was facing, nothing justified what he had done. The defense, on the other hand, urged the jury to consider his mental state, to see him as a broken man who had been consumed by fear, paranoia, and desperation. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge, while acknowledging the tragedy of the situation, made it clear that no level of financial distress or mental illness excused the murder of innocent children and a devoted wife. Neil Jacobson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His fate was sealed, and the courtroom was filled with an overwhelming sense of loss. Neil Jacobson reached a plea deal with the state. He changed his plea from not guilty to guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He stated that the reason was the family's mounting financial situation. Now, he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Neil Jacobson answered to the judge in the Palm Beach County courtroom, admitting that he shot his wife, Frankie, and then shot their twin 7-year-old sons while they were asleep in their Wellington home back. During the family's turn to speak in court, Neil held his head down and never looked up. Even after the trial ended, many questions remained. Could this tragedy have been prevented if Neil had received different treatment? Were the medications to blame, or was he simply a man who refused to face his failures? No one could say for certain what had driven him to this point. However, what was undeniable was that a mother and 2 young boys had lost their lives in the most horrific way possible. Nothing could ever undo that. Teenage years can be a particularly vulnerable time in a person's life. During this period, individuals transition from childhood to adulthood. They might appear innocent and carefree, but they often hold on to secrets, maybe out of fear or embarrassment. Sometimes, not feeling able to share their struggles with a trusted parent or loved one can lead to serious consequences. The case of Justice Garrett, who was only 16 when her life was tragically cut short in 2018, has shocked Florida. For her mother, it was a heartbreaking realization. She had not recognized or understood the struggles her daughter was facing. Justice Marie Garrett was born on March 23, 2002, and is the eldest daughter of Danielle Pratt and Stanley Garrett. Justice spent most of her childhood and teenage years in New Smyrna Beach, a small town in Volusia County, Florida. In 2016, her parents divorced. Justice lived with their mother. A year later, Danielle started dating Robert Nixon Kern Jr. By the fall of 2017, Danielle moved with her daughters to Sorrento, Florida, a tiny rural town with a population of just over 1,000. They settled into Robert's house. Justice faced significant challenges after moving and struggled to adjust to her new surroundings. She missed her close friends who stayed in New Smyrna Beach, felt the difficulty of transferring schools in the middle of the academic year, and was unhappy with her new home and her mother's partner. Despite her frustrations, Justice remained respectful, tried not to cause any issues. Known for her friendly and humorous personality, she quickly made friends at her new school, especially forming a strong bond with a classmate. The two girls became nearly inseparable, with Justice often staying at her classmate's house, and they even referred to each other as sisters on social media. On Friday, April 13, 2018, Justice overslept and missed her school bus. In her rush to get ready for class, she skipped breakfast. That day, her younger sister, Devon, was ill and stayed home, while their mother was preparing to take Devon to the hospital. Justice chose to take a public bus to school, which was only a few stops away. She packed her backpack, said goodbye to her mother, and left the house. That was the last time anyone saw Justice alive. When Justice didn't return home from school at the expected time, her mother, Danielle, wasn't worried. She thought Justice had gone to her friend's house, which she often did after class. When Justice had missed school on Friday, and her phone had been off for almost 2 days, Danielle felt a surge of panic. After trying several times to reach her daughter without success, she hurried to the local police station to report her missing. The search for Justice began right away. When the officers found out that Justice had only moved to the area 6 months ago, they thought she might have gone back to her old town to visit friends for the weekend. Authorities believe that teenagers sometimes leave home suddenly, either in rebellion or for other reasons, and they thought Justice would likely return soon. However, Danielle firmly believed that her daughter wouldn't have left so far without telling her first. The initial step was to identify Justice's friends and find out if she had a boyfriend, any recent conflicts, or other relevant information that could clarify the circumstances of her disappearance. Justice left home without any money, and all of her personal items were still there. Her phone lost signal shortly after she departed for school. Her social media accounts showed no activity since late Thursday night, and she didn't reply to any calls or messages. None of her friends knew her whereabouts, as she hadn't been in touch with anyone. Justice was not drinking alcohol or using banned substance. She was not in a relationship and had never had serious romantic involvement. Justice surrounded herself with positive influences, had no conflicts with others, and had a clean legal record. Teachers at her school spoke highly of her. Her classmates viewed her as kind, compassionate, and sweet. The police quickly checked all local crime reports, incidents, and traffic accidents throughout the area. They considered the possibility that she might have been involved in an accident and was unable to communicate. However, there were no records of her being involved in any such events. Using data from her phone, investigators were able to track her movements on the morning she disappeared. Around 7:30 a.m., Justice left her home and began walking toward the school. Approximately 15 minutes later, her movements became unusual. She stopped for a moment and then abruptly changed direction. Shortly afterward, her phone was turned off. Justice's disappearance sparked rumors and speculation throughout the small, quiet town, where little ever happened. Any incident quickly became the center of attention, spreading through gossip and often embellished with falsehoods. On April 17th, for days after Justice went missing, a man alerted the police about a disturbing discovery he made in a wooded area outside of town. An experienced runner, he often jogged along a secluded trail that passed through a park and into the forest. That morning, while exploring the woods, he was struck by a strong, foul smell that seemed like decay. At first, he believed it was just the remains of a dead animal and thought about reporting it for removal. However, his curiosity led him to investigate the smell further. He stepped off the trail and walked approximately 15 feet into the underbrush, where he found a shocking sight: a severely decomposed human body, unrecognizable in appearance. Based on the long hair and pieces of clothing, it looked like a young woman. Her pants were pulled down to her ankles, her shirt and bra were pulled up around her neck, and her hoodie was tied tightly around her head. He quickly called the police and waited on the trail to avoid disturbing any potential evidence. When the officers arrived, they carefully examined the area and the remains. It was evident that this was a violent crime scene and the victim was a young woman. Her clothes were torn and her undergarments were missing, suggesting the crime was both abuse and aggressive. There were visible bite marks on her legs, probably from wild animals, but the most severe injuries were inflicted by a corrosive chemical. This substance had damaged her face down to the bone and had also been poured on her chest, lower abdomen, and private areas. It was clear that the perpetrator intended to disfigure the victim and remove any DNA evidence, which was unfortunately successful. From the beginning, investigators believed that the body discovered in the woods was that of Justice, who reported missing a few days earlier. However, due to significant chemical damage and decomposition, DNA testing was necessary for confirmation. Unfortunately, the Garrett family's fears were confirmed. Justice had been found dead. Her remains were located approximately 30 minutes away from her hometown. Evidence indicated that she had endured severe beating prior to her death, as her nose, cheekbone, and several ribs were fractured. Because of the advanced decomposition, the exact cause of death could not be clearly identified, but it was thought to be due to mechanical asphyxiation. The man who found the remains provided important information to the police during his interview. He shared that he often jogged along the same path every other day. 2 days before discovering the body, he had seen a suspicious man coming out of the woods near where Justice's remains were later located. Although the witness could not give a detailed description because he only saw the man briefly from behind and from a distance, he described him as a short, stocky white male dressed in jeans and a black hoodie. The man quickly left when he realized someone else was nearby and vanished behind the trees. At the time, the runner found the encounter strange but didn't think much of it. There was no noticeable smell of decay that day, so he pushed the incident from his mind. However, after he found the remains 2 days later, he remembered the unusual man on the trail and reported it to the authorities. Detectives quickly suspected that the unknown person in the woods could be the criminal behind the crime. They thought he might have returned to the scene to hide evidence. Experts identified the chemical used on the body as chlorine bleach. This, combined with the area's humid climate, sped up decomposition and made the remains unrecognizable. The jogger was eliminated as a suspect after passing a lie detector test and giving a strong alibi for the day Justice went missing. Justice's mother stated that her daughter intended to take a public bus to school that morning. However, security camera footage showed that Justice never arrived at the bus stop. A neighbor reported seeing Justice get into a car belonging to her stepfather, Robert. This information shifted the investigation's focus, prompting detectives to question Justice's parents again to understand why they hadn't been honest. Danielle, Justice's mother, quickly admitted that her partner, Robert, had recently lost his driver's license temporarily. Since Justice was running late that morning, he decided to give her a ride. Danielle had kept this information secret to avoid causing issues for Robert. At the time of the first interview, Justice's body has not been found yet. She thought Justice was still alive and would return home soon. Detectives quickly requested surveillance footage from cameras near the school to verify Robert's account. However, the recordings showed that Robert had neither dropped Justice off at school nor anywhere close by. His car was not seen on any cameras along the route to the school, raising questions about where they had gone. This indicated that Robert was likely the last person to see Justice alive. When questioned again, Robert confessed that he had driven Justice that morning despite having a suspended license. He explained that she had begged him not to take her to school but to the nearby town, where she allegedly had a meeting with a secret boyfriend. Robert claimed he did not know the name of this person and initially refused to take her, but eventually relented to her requests in an effort to improve their strained relationship. Justice had asked him not to tell her mother about this trip, assuring him she would return on her own later that day. She also said that since it was Friday, she planned to spend the night at a friend's house. Robert agreed, not seeing anything unusual or concerning about the situation. This new information brought a potential suspect into the investigation, a secret boyfriend. Investigators needed to find and identify him quickly, as he could either be connected to Justice's disappearance or, at the very least, might be the last person to have seen her alive. Law enforcement started their investigation by examining Justice's contacts and social media activity since her phone was still missing. They confiscated her laptop, which led to even more questions. Justice had several accounts on different social media platforms, where she regularly communicated with friends from both her real life and the online world, but no signs of romantic relationships or a boyfriend were found. One particular account, however, appeared strange and suspicious. Investigators concentrated on this profile to identify its owner and determine if it was linked to Justice's disappearance. A young man named Kevin had been increasingly interested in Justice Garrett over the past few months. He messaged her every day, liked her posts, and complimented her photos. However, Justice appeared uninterested. She seldom replied, often ignored his messages, and showed no intention of keeping in touch. Justice's friends later revealed that she had talked about a persistent admirer who frequently messaged her on social media, but she found him more bothersome than charming. Kevin's profile indicated that he was 2 years older than Justice and lived in the same town. The profile included only a few pictures of an athletic and attractive young man, but none of Justice's friends or family had ever met him in real life. Eventually, it was uncovered that the account was fake, with the photos taken from the internet. Experts promptly accessed the account and traced its creation. The investigation showed that the account didn't belong to a teenager but was linked to an adult man named Robert. Justice's stepfather was brought in for questioning. Detectives wanted to know why he had created a fake account to communicate with his stepdaughter and why he hadn't mentioned it before. Robert seemed taken aback that investigators had discovered his link to the account, but he quickly regained his composure and provided an explanation. He stated that he had created the account to help boost Justice's self-esteem, suggesting that as the new girl in town and at school, she might enjoy getting compliments from a seemingly attractive young man. Justice was new to the area, but she quickly fit into her school and made many friends. Recently, however, her close friends noticed changes in her behavior. The cheerful and carefree teenager became more tense and nervous. Although she didn't share the reasons for this change, she often stayed at her best friend's house. Justice spent so much time there that it felt like she had moved in, yet she never told her best friend what was bothering her. Her best friend observed that Justice's stepfather came by her house several times to pick Justice's up. Each time, Justice appeared anxious, tried to avoid going with him. She would call her mother, pleading to stay a few more nights at her friend's and promising to finish her chores, focus on schoolwork in return. Danielle typically agreed to her requests. Robert and Justice reportedly had a difficult relationship from the beginning, a fact known to her friends. However, Justice never claimed that he was aggressive or acted inappropriately, and no one around her, including her mother, had witnessed anything concerning in Robert's behavior towards his stepdaughter. As doubts about him grew, Robert became as the primary suspect in the investigation into Justice's tragic death. Police took him into custody for more questioning while also investigating his background and lifestyle. Robert, 43 years old, had a troubled past with the law, including convictions for burglary, banned substance possession, and violent incidents. His criminal record made it very difficult for him to find stable employment, so he sometimes worked illegally as a carpenter at a local sawmill, taking on odd jobs to get by. Detectives were now trying to piece together Robert's troubled history, his behavior towards Justice, and the events surrounding a horrific crime. Robert had hidden his past from everyone, including Danielle, who was unaware that she was living with someone who had a criminal background. When investigators uncovered the truth about him, Danielle was shocked and finally spoke out. She revealed that Robert had offered to drive Justice to school that day, even though Justice had expressed his reluctance. When Justice did not come home, Danielle became worried. However, Robert reassured her that Justice was staying overnight at her best friend's house. He even told her not to call the police or contact her friend. Investigators looked into Robert's devices and found that in the months before Justice disappeared, he had repeatedly searched online for information about substances that could make a person unconscious or immobile. He had also explored ways to buy such substances on the dark web and seemed to have successfully made a purchase. Robert didn't stop there. He looked into ways to remove DNA evidence from a body using common household items like bleach and disinfectants. He even examined satellite images of wooded areas near DeLand, where Justice's body was ultimately discovered. It was apparent that Robert had been carefully planning his crime for months, intending to hide the body and eliminate all evidence. His motive was increasingly clear. He had developed an unhealthy obsession with justice and believed that the only way to fulfill his disturbing desires was through violence. To evade the legal repercussions for his actions, he resolved to kill her. Investigators cleared up their suspicions about Robert's involvement by examining the geolocation data from his phone on that day. He drove away from their home with Justice toward her school, but then suddenly changed direction and stopped in a remote area. At this point, it's believed that Robert may have used a chemical, possibly chloroform, to incapacitate Justice. He then turned off Justice's phone. His vehicle was monitored as it traveled to the location where it remained for about an hour. This time frame would have provided him enough opportunity to assault Justice, physically harm her, strangle her, and hide her body in the woods. From 8:12 a.m. to 9:17 a.m., Robert's phone remained in the area where Justice's body was eventually found. On that day, he carried a small bottle of a chlorine-based substance, which he poured over her face and other areas to eliminate possible evidence. However, Robert became anxious, worrying that he might have left traces behind. 2 days later, he came back to the scene with a large container of bleach, poured it over Justice's head, chest, and lower body in a final effort to destroy any evidence that could connect him to the crime. That morning, the attacker revisited the crime scene and was seen by a jogger. The jogger later found Justice's body and reported it to the police. Kern's alibi quickly unraveled. Although he worked unofficially at a local sawmill, he had asked 2 co-workers to falsely claim he was on time that day, when in fact he was almost 2 hours late. When questioned further, both co-workers admitted the truth after being warned they could face charges for lying and hiding evidence in a violent crime. Robert denied all the charges, but the evidence against him was overwhelming, leading to a trial. Witnesses described Justice as living in fear during the final months of her life, often avoiding her home. Despite her struggles, she never expressed her fears, not even to her mother. Danielle, caught up in her love for her new partner, didn't recognize the danger and never asked Robert about his past. Prosecutors thoroughly disproved Robert's statements, showing he had carefully planned the crime with the intent to kill Justice. Forensic evidence, such as moss and soil samples from the location where Justice's body was found, matched particles found on his car mats, strengthening the connection to the crime scene. However, allegations of abuse assault could not be definitively proven because the DNA evidence and tissue samples had been destroyed by a corrosive chemical that he used, which eroded the victim's remains. In August 2022, almost 2.5 years after the crime, Robert Nixon Kern Jr. was found guilty of premeditated violent murder. He received a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole, meaning he will never be released. The tragic murder of 16-year-old Justice Garrett on April 13, 2018, in Sorrento, Florida, exposed the hidden dangers of teenage vulnerability. Justice's silent struggles, unnoticed by her mother, Danielle, underscore the critical need for open communication and vigilance to protect teens from unseen threats, ensuring her loss inspires lasting change. The silence in the small town of Goshen, surrounded by orchards, was shattered when police officers discovered a lifeless man on the bathroom floor, Daniel Green. On February 6, 2015, at noon, his colleagues became concerned when he didn't arrive for his shift and went to check on him. What they found was shocking. Daniel, just 31 years old, had been shot 4 times, with 1 bullet striking his forehead. Neighbors reported not hearing anything unusual. There were no clues to identify the shooter. There was no weapon, no DNA evidence. It seemed the perpetrator had meticulously covered their tracks. Daniel Green spent his entire life in Goshen. He worked for 11 years in the California Police Department and earned the respect of the town's residents. Passionate about his job, he always wanted to make a positive impact on the community, where everyone knew and trusted each other. Tragically, it was here that his life came to a sudden and harsh end. The police launched their investigation, quickly turning their attention to Daniel's personal life. Since his divorce from 27-year-old Erica Sandoval, he had been living alone. Their relationship was complicated. Even after separating, Erica continued to meddle in Daniel's life, trying to control him despite their official split. On February 6, 2015, Erica showed up at the scene shortly after receiving a message from a friend. She entered the house, crying uncontrollably in front of the officers. She claimed that she hadn't seen Daniel that day and was not involved in the incident. However, her actions raised red flags for the investigators. She arrived too quickly, displayed excessive emotion, and there were many unanswered questions surrounding her involvement. The death of Officer Green impacted the Tulare County Sheriff's Department profoundly. His colleagues began to question whether his tragic end was connected to his work or if it stemmed from personal issues. As the questions multiplied, one thing became clear: these mysteries needed to be resolved quickly. Investigators meticulously examined motives, connections, and personal conflicts, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. Matt and Misty, Daniel's twin siblings, were deeply affected by their brother's loss. They grew up in Porterville, a small town in California, where they shared a dream of working in law enforcement. Matt initially joined the police force but later shifted to a career in law. In contrast, Daniel remained dedicated to his role in law enforcement, advancing to the position of officer and taking pride in his chosen path. Their sister consistently supported them and felt proud of her brothers. Daniel Green was known for both his career in the police force and his love for motorcycles. He was a member of a motorcycle club, where he enjoyed the thrill of riding and the feeling of freedom it provided. A close friend of his, James, often joined him on rides through the countryside, cherishing those moments on the road together. Daniel's personal life was quite active. He enjoyed dating and rarely spent time alone. For a while, he would frequently arrive at family events with different girlfriends each month. This pattern continued until late 2009 when he met Erica Sandoval, a 22-year-old nurse. Meeting Erica changed his life completely. He fell deeply in love and decided to take a step towards settling down. At that point, both of his siblings were already married, while he had been single. However, with Erica, it felt different. Daniel was truly captivated by her. A close friend of Erica revealed that Erica was very much in love with Daniel at the start of their relationship. Their connection was strong, and they initially appeared to be the perfect couple. However, Daniel's sister observed that although Erica was generally friendly, she could quickly become upset if things didn't go as she wanted. As time went on, stress accumulated in their relationship, leading to regular conflicts and arguments. Erica grew up in Southern California in a middle-class family. She had a brother who recalled that Erica, as their parents' only daughter, always felt special. Her parents pampered her, striving to provide her with the best of everything. As a result, Erica never faced hardship or mistreatment. She came to expect that her wishes would be met without hesitation. With the constant support and attention from her parents and brother, she developed a sense of entitlement and believed she deserved special treatment. Daniel Green, 26, and Erica Sandoval, 23, shocked their family and friends by secretly getting married in Las Vegas. They didn't inform anyone beforehand. Daniel's brother and sister were taken aback when they received a late-night message that included a photo of the marriage certificate. A few weeks later, the couple hosted a small celebration for their close friends, where Erica wore a white dress and Daniel donned a black suit. Despite seeming happy, Daniel and Erica's relationship was not perfect. A friend and fellow motorcyclist of Daniel's recalled that even before they got married, they had a serious fight where Erica used a razor to damage the furniture in Daniel's home. His friend considered this a troubling sign that should not have been overlooked. Daniel's brother, Matt, also saw the damage firsthand and was worried, but Daniel dismissed it as just an emotional outburst. Tensions continued within the family. During one argument, Matt and their sister heard Erica shouting at Daniel from another room and saw him break down in tears. Matt described it as one of the most painful moments of his life, feeling devastated to hear his brother cry. Intervening in Daniel and Erica's relationship was challenging. The Green family faced tough times growing up. Daniel's brother and sister recalled how they, along with their mother, suffered from their stepfather's abuse. He had a criminal background, drank heavily, and used banned substance. To shield their younger sister, Matt and Daniel, being older, often took the worst of the abuse. Eventually, their mother obtained a restraining order, and shortly after, their stepfather died. These experiences deeply affected each of them. Daniel's relationship with Erica mirrored the troubling dynamics of his childhood. Family members observed that Erica exerted control over Daniel, isolating him from friends and family while also belittling him verbally. Even though Daniel was a police officer who frequently dealt with victims of domestic abuse, he struggled to acknowledge that he was in a similar situation. He realized he was becoming a victim but felt powerless to change his circumstances due to fear, shame, and a reluctance to admit weakness. Just like women, many men often do not report domestic abuse for these same reasons. The problems in Daniel and Erica's marriage escalated in February 2011 when a neighbor witnessed a heated argument between them. Erica was shouting and provoking Daniel, pushing him to his limits. He tried to maintain his composure, aware that losing control could jeopardize his career. In a moment of desperation, he asked the neighbor to call emergency services to intervene. The police arrested Erica, but despite the seriousness of the situation, Daniel chose not to press charges, resulting in her quick release. This incident marked a turning point for Daniel, leading him to decide that their relationship was over. In January 2012, just a year after their official marriage, they divorced and separated. A few months later, Erica informed her friends that she was pregnant with Daniel's child. The news reached Daniel, and despite their past issues, he decided to give their relationship another chance for the sake of the unborn baby. They got back together, moved in again. Daniel's family hoped that this time would be different, that their conflicts would be resolved. He made an effort to keep the peace at home and looked forward to the baby's arrival. However, the issues persisted. Erica frequently confided in her friend about Daniel's harsh behavior. She described Daniel as cold and indifferent, expressing her unhappiness in the relationship. Her friend recalled Erica saying that Daniel had once grabbed her by the neck and attempted to choke her, which made Erica fear a tragic outcome. Daniel's relatives and friends described Erica as having aggressive behavior. She damaged furniture by slashing mattresses and sofas, which exemplified her lack of control. Their conflicts grew worse each month, yet neither side reached out for assistance. The relationship remained unstable, leading to increased tension. Despite attempts to maintain family unity, Daniel and Erica lived in a state of constant stress. Friends and family observed that their relationship had turned into a harmful cycle where both individuals were suffering, but neither was willing to make changes. They kept their issues hidden, avoided seeking help, resulting in a pattern of mutual blame and pain. On January 5, 2013, Erica gave birth to a son whom they named Aiden. At that moment, their relationship seemed to finally be improving. Daniel was thrilled to become a father and felt that his life had new meaning. For the sake of his family, he decided to sell his motorcycle, understanding that the safety and well-being of his loved ones were more important. This decision was not easy for him, but he did it for Aiden and for the stability of their family. Daniel posted pictures with his son on social media, capturing moments of joy and his happy life. However, just 6 months later, the tension started building again. The constant conflicts, arguments became more frequent. Daniel suggested that Erica move out, and she agreed, but she took Aiden with her, completely cut off contact with her ex-husband. Unable to see his son, Daniel fell into a deep depression. He decided to fight for custody of Aiden, which led to the start of a serious conflict between them. These events took place alongside another significant incident in Daniel's life. Just before Aiden was born, Daniel was on a motorcycle ride with a friend when his brakes suddenly failed. They stopped to check, and Daniel found that some wires had been cut. He immediately suspected Erica might be involved. When he got home, he confronted her, but she denied any wrongdoing and claimed she would never endanger his life. Erica disapproved of his motorcycle riding, seeing it as dangerous. Their arguments increased after the brake incident, creating more tension in their relationship. Daniel chose not to involve the police and kept the incident to himself to avoid drawing escalating conflicts. He recognized that their situation was becoming unhealthy, but he decided to stay silent in hopes of managing the fallout. After selling the motorcycle and welcoming the birth of his son, Daniel hoped for a calmer period in their family life. However, conflicts and tensions persisted. In the fall of 2014, during another night spent together, Daniel experienced a frightening incident that shook him deeply. In the middle of the night, he suddenly woke up to find Erica standing over him with a gun. She pointed it at him, claimed she had a nightmare in which he had been unfaithful. Erica expressed her desire to end his life to escape the pain of betrayal. Daniel calmed her down by reassuring her that it was just a dream and that he had always been faithful. After she lowered the gun, Daniel realized how dangerous their relationship had become. He shared the incident with his friends and concluded that it was time to end the toxic relationship for good. In January 2015, despite previous conflicts, Daniel and Erica came together to celebrate their son Aiden's second birthday with close family. During the gathering, they appeared to be friendly, leading some to speculate that they might be rekindling their relationship. However, Daniel was aware that a future with Erica was not feasible and wanted to avoid their past disagreements. Following the celebration, Daniel informed his friends about his new girlfriend, a 20-year-old named Brenda Vela, and shared a photo of them on social media, revealing his happiness. Many people were optimistic that he was starting a more peaceful chapter in his life. Erica and Daniel's relationship had been marred by conflict, mutual blame. Their text messages were filled with hostility, including hundreds containing anger and insults. Daniel accused Erica of trying to take his son away from him, while Erica accused him of being selfish and unfit father. Their arguments covered topics from parenting to personal attacks. There was no constructive communication, only increasing tension. On the morning of February 6, 2015, Daniel dropped Aiden off at Erica's house as planned and then went to the gym. After working out, he returned home, where a tragic event occurred. Daniel entered the bathroom, sat down, and was shot 4 times in the arm, chest, neck, and forehead. He died instantly, with no chance to protect himself. The day after Daniel's death, Erica was brought in for questioning. She insisted she hadn't visited his house in weeks and had no connection to what had happened. Investigators, however, told her they had surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera showing her entering the house on the day of the incident. Although the video did not clearly identify her, the investigators used this information to pressure her. The tactic worked. Overwhelmed, Erica confessed and even revealed where she had disposed of the firearm involved in the crime. The prosecutor claimed that jealousy and a fear of being replaced by another woman motivated the crime. When Erica was arrested, police discovered a note in her purse with Brenda's name and birth year, suggesting Erica had been monitoring Daniel's new girlfriend. The evidence against her was strong, but the trial didn't begin until October 1, 2019, 5 years after the incident. Erica made about 170 phone calls to Daniel in an effort to reconnect after she found out that he had introduced their son, Aiden, to Brenda and that they were spending time together. This prompted Erica to lose control. The prosecutor also mentioned that after the crime, Erica deleted several messages from Daniel's phone where she had tried to persuade him to believe she would change and improve. However, Daniel made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with her. He intended to move forward with his life. During the trial, Erica's lawyer argued that Daniel had been an abusive husband who repeatedly attacked her. They presented audio recordings of their intense arguments, where Daniel could be heard insulting and threatening Erica. These recordings were vital to her defense, highlighting the aggression and cruelty in their relationship. In court, Erica detailed the abuse she suffered over the years. She stated that Daniel physically assaulted her, choked her, and made threats against her. Erica explained that she lived in constant fear and refrained from reporting the abuse to the police because she felt it would be pointless. She believed that, as a police officer, Daniel could sway any investigation and that he was too powerful for her to seek justice. Erica also thought that people would not believe her because Daniel was well respected in their community. On February 5, 2015, the day before the incident, Erica said she had a phone conversation with Daniel. During their conversation, they flirted, which gave her hope of rebuilding their relationship. The following day, she decided to visit his house to see if they could reconnect. Upon entering, she noticed 2 firearms on the table, which made her feel uneasy. Curious, Erica explored the house further and discovered a partially open safe in one of the rooms. Inside the safe, she found 2 intimate photos of individuals who she believed looked underage. This discovery shocked her and made her worried that Daniel could be a danger to their son. Erica said that seeing the photos changed how she viewed Daniel. She recalled how he had made her wear school uniforms and started to realize that his interests might be more sinister than she had assumed. After putting the documents away, Erica heard a car pull up. It was Daniel. In a panic, she grabbed 2 loaded guns and hid in one of the rooms, unsure of what to do next. When Daniel entered the house, he moved through the rooms. Erica heard him go to the bathroom, and with the guns in her hands, she followed him, filled with fear. When she entered the bathroom, she found Daniel sitting on the toilet. He saw her and shouted angrily, threatening her. At that moment, she claimed she started shooting. She couldn't remember how many shots she fired but kept shooting until she felt safe. Then she ran out of the house, disposed of the guns, and attempted to escape. Erica revealed that she continued to have an intimate relationship with Daniel despite his mistreatment because she was afraid of how he would react if she refused him. She believed that not meeting his needs would lead to his aggression. This fear was a significant reason for her staying with him. She felt that her safety depended on obeying his demands. During the trial, Erica spoke for the first time about finding photos in Daniel's safe. She explained that she had kept this information to herself during the investigation because she did not trust the authorities and thought they would side with her ex-husband. Daniel's family was shocked by her allegations and completely rejected them. Erica maintained that she was scared her concerns would be overlooked or misunderstood. However, her claims were not backed up by evidence. Officers who searched Daniel's home found no illegal photos or proof to support her accusations. The prosecutor argued that Erica's statements were false, intended to evade accountability. Erica's lawyer attempted to paint Daniel negatively by highlighting that his phone and computer had hundreds of explicit photos and videos featuring adults. Additionally, the lawyer mentioned that Daniel had deleted over 1,000 images from his phone years ago, suggesting that this could imply he had troubling secrets. Erica may have had valid reasons to be afraid of him. She expressed sorrow for her actions and apologized to Daniel's family, stating that she never intended for things to end so tragically, that her actions were motivated by panic and fear for her son. Erica's attorney argued that the responsibility for Daniel's death was not only on Erica but also on Daniel himself. They were caught in a traumatic relationship that neither could escape, leading to a tragic outcome. The jury deliberated for nearly 4 days but couldn't reach a unanimous verdict, resulting in a mistrial. Erica's attorney viewed this as a positive outcome, as it allowed them to reevaluate the case and plan a new defense strategy. Nevertheless, Erica lost her parental rights. Daniel's brother, Matt Green, and his wife adopted Aiden. Erica Sandoval's first trial in 2019 ended with a hung jury. The next trial begins on February 6, 2025, exactly 10 years to the day after the crime was committed. Jury deliberations began on Tuesday, May 6, 2025. On May 8, 2025, Erica was found guilty of first-degree murder with the special allegation that she personally and intentionally discharged a firearm, causing serious bodily injury to Daniel. Sandoval's sentencing is scheduled for June 5, 2025. The trial is taking place in Room 20 at the Southern County Judicial Center in Porterville, where Sandoval faces 50 years to life in prison. Specifically as follows: she could be sentenced to 25 years to life for the murder charge and an additional 25 years to life for the weapons charge. Sandoval has served 10 years and may be eligible for an elder parole hearing when she has served 20 consecutive years and reached the age of 50. This tragedy has highlighted the destructive potential of jealousy and personal struggles when individuals don't seek help or end toxic relationships in a timely manner. Many lives have been shattered, causing immense pain and leaving many things unsaid. Nevertheless, there are still people who are fighting for a better future, striving for Aiden's happiness. While the story may have reached its conclusion, its impact will linger, reminding us of the hidden struggles that can exist behind the facades of seemingly perfect homes. In the heart of Sydney's central business district, where towering skyscrapers define the skyline and the city pulses with activity, a devastating crime unfolded on August 13, 2019, claiming the life of Michaela Dunn. 3 years earlier, on May 14, 2016, in the vibrant suburb of Parramatta, a brutal assault left Dasha Volnukin deeply traumatized, with her death in May 2018 adding to the sorrow. These incidents, occurring in modern urban settings, shocked their communities and sparked widespread concern about safety in Australia's cities, particularly for those in vulnerable professions like escorting. The stories of Michaela and Dasha, though distinct, highlight the hidden dangers faced by escort profession and the urgent need for systemic protections. Michaela Dunn, a 24-year-old Sydney resident, was tragically murdered in 2019, leaving her family, friends, and community grappling with profound loss. Her death underscored the risks that can persist even in environments designed for security, challenging assumptions about urban safety. Similarly, Dasha Volnukin, a 22-year-old Ukrainian model who had moved to Australia in 2015, endured a horrific assault that marked her life with lasting trauma. Her resilience in reporting the crime led to justice, but her untimely death 2 years later deepened the tragedy. On August 13, 2019, at approximately 1:30 p.m., police received an urgent call about a violent incident in a high-rise apartment on Clarence Street, a bustling thoroughfare in Sydney's CBD lined with corporate offices and residential complexes. Emergency services arrived promptly, discovering a distressing scene inside a modern apartment building. Forensic investigators cordoned off the area, documenting evidence of a struggle, such as disarrayed furniture and personal items. Neighbors reported hearing disturbances, but the building's soundproofed walls obscured critical details, complicating initial inquiries. The investigation revealed that Michaela had been fatally wounded, her body bearing a severe neck injury that marked the brutality of the attack. 3 years earlier, on May 14, 2016, at 1:30 a.m., a similar tragedy struck in Parramatta, a dynamic suburb 25 kilometers west of Sydney's CBD, known for its rich cultural diversity and thriving commercial scene. Dasha Volnukin faced a terrifying assault in a residential unit. The incident unfolded discreetly, leaving few immediate clues. Security footage captured a man, later identified as Mustafa Kairisai, 28, entering and exiting the building, but provided no direct evidence of the violence that transpired inside. Dasha's prompt reporting to police, including detailed descriptions of her assailant, was crucial in advancing the investigation, despite the private nature of the crime. Michaela and Dasha, both young women in their early 20s, lived in Sydney, residing in apartments equipped with modern security features. The fact that these violent acts occurred in private, supposedly safe spaces stunned local residents and prompted extensive police investigations. Authorities worked diligently to establish timelines, interview potential witnesses, and determine whether the cases were connected. While no direct link was confirmed, both women worked as escorts, a legal but high-risk profession in Australia, which emerged as a significant commonality. This shared profession highlighted the vulnerabilities inherent in escort profession, where financial independence comes at the cost of exposure to potential danger. To fully appreciate the impact of these events, it's essential to understand Michaela and Dasha as individuals with unique aspirations and challenges. Their lives, though cut short by tragedy, reflect the complexities of navigating personal and professional choices in a fast-paced, high-cost city like Sydney. Michaela Dunn was a proud Sydney native, raised in inner West Sydney, a region celebrated for its close-knit communities and eclectic atmosphere. By 2019, she had entered the escort industry, a decision that offered financial independence in Sydney's competitive economy. Escorting, while legal in New South Wales, can provide significant earnings, enabling flexibility and opportunities like travel. Michaela's choice to keep her work private was likely influenced by societal stigma, which is a common practice among escorts to protect their personal relationships. Friends remembered her as a compassionate and resilient individual, whose warmth left a lasting impression on those around her. Her engagement with Sydney's vibrant cultural scenes, from art galleries to nightlife, reflected a young woman embracing the city's dynamic spirit. Dasha Volnukin, born in Canada, arrived in Australia in 2015, drawn to Sydney's cosmopolitan allure and economic prospects. At 22, she worked as a model and escort, roles that showcased her confidence and adaptability. Her move to Australia was driven by a desire for new opportunities, but the challenges of building a life in a new country were significant. Dasha's decision to enter the escort industry was kept discreet, likely to avoid judgment in a society that often stigmatizes escort. Friends described her as empathetic and determined, qualities that helped her navigate the complexities of migration and work. Her brief tenure as an escort exposed her to rapid risks, culminating in the traumatic assault that would shape her final years. Both Michaela and Dasha pursued escorting to achieve financial stability and shape their futures in Sydney's demanding environment. The promise of autonomy in a city with high living costs was compelling, yet their profession brought them into contact with dangerous individuals. These incidents underscore the vulnerabilities inherent in escort, despite its legality, and highlight the need for enhanced protections to ensure worker safety. The events leading to these tragedies began with Michaela's murder on August 13, 2019. That day, Sydney's CBD was alive with midday activity, its streets filled with office workers and visitors. In her Clarence Street apartment, designed with modern security measures for young professionals, Michaela prepared to meet a client for a routine appointment. The client, Mert Ney, entered the building mid-afternoon, passing through standard entry protocols. What began as a typical booking turned deadly when Ney attacked Michaela, inflicting a fatal neck wound. He fled via the fire stairs, bloodied, leaving behind evidence of the crime. Police found Michaela deceased in her apartment, a space intended as a sanctuary, revealing a shocking breach of safety. On May 14, 2016, Dasha faced her own harrowing ordeal in a Parramatta residential unit. Arranging a client visit, she met Mustafa Kairisai, who appeared unremarkable upon entry. Inside the apartment, Kairisai turned violent, threatening Dasha with a knife, blindfolding her, and binding her with duct tape. He abused her and forced her to shower, attempting to erase evidence. Dasha survived by complying, but the trauma was profound. After Kairisai fled, she reported the incident to police, providing critical details that aided the investigation. The building's modern design and privacy features limited witness accounts, posing challenges for authorities, but Dasha's courage in reporting the crime was pivotal. Both Michaela and Dasha encountered clients who transformed private meetings into violent ordeals, exposing the inherent dangers of their profession. These incidents, occurring in secure urban settings, challenged assumptions about safety in modern cities and sparked public discourse about the risks faced by sex workers. The investigation into Michaela's death began swiftly on August 13, 2019, at her Clarence Street apartment. Police discovered her body with a fatal neck injury, and forensic teams meticulously collected evidence, including traces of the struggle. Security footage revealed Mert Ney, aged 21, entering the building at 1:30 p.m. and fleeing bloodied at 1:50 p.m., brandishing a knife. Ney's erratic behavior on Clarence Street alarmed pedestrians, leading bystanders to pursue him with improvised tools, a chair and a milk crate, restraining him near Wynyard Lane until police arrested him at 2 p.m. A USB drive containing violent material was recovered, but no terrorist motives were confirmed. Ney, unemployed and residing in Blacktown, had documented mental health struggles, which police noted as a potential factor, though his intent remained unclear. A search of his Blacktown residence provided further context, suggesting financial distress may have contributed to his actions. Dasha's assault investigation progressed due to her immediate report on May 14, 2016. She described her assailant's appearance and actions, which, combined with CCTV footage from the Parramatta unit, helped police identify Kairisai. The footage showed Kairisai entering and exiting calmly, offering no hint of the violence inside. Police canvassed Parramatta, but the building's security measures limited witness accounts. Dasha's description aligned with other assault reports, leading to Kairisai's arrest on May 28, 2016, in Bondi after a pursuit. He was linked to multiple attacks on escorts in 2016, indicating a pattern of predatory behavior. Mert Ney, responsible for Michaela's murder, had a troubled background marked by unemployment and mental health issues. Living in crisis housing in Blacktown in 2019, he faced significant personal challenges, including financial instability and untreated mental health conditions. His arrest initiated legal proceedings for murder, attempted murder of another individual, Lin Bo, aged 41, and related offenses. No clear motive was established, with his actions attributed to a combination of mental instability and situational factors. Mustafa Kayirasai, born around 1985, targeted escorts in Sydney during 2016. Court records indicate his attacks were planned, exploiting the vulnerabilities of escort. On May 14, he abused Dasha, using a knife to intimidate her and employing tactics like blindfolding and binding to control the situation. Similar incidents in the CBD and Parramatta suggested a deliberate pattern. Kayirasai's defense claimed his actions were influenced by personal issues, but evidence of premeditation prevailed. He faced multiple charges, reflecting the severity of his crimes. The cases of Mert Nay and Mustafa Kayirasai illustrate divergent pathways to violence, each underscoring unique challenges in addressing crime in urban Australia. Nay's attack on Michaela was a chaotic, impulsive act, seemingly driven by personal distress and mental health struggles, reflecting a life marked by instability. In contrast, Kayirasai's assault on Dasha was systematic and predatory, exploiting the vulnerabilities of sex workers in a calculated manner. Their arrests marked the beginning of legal efforts to hold them accountable for the harm inflicted on Michaela, Dasha, and others. The legal proceedings for Dasha's case unfolded at Sydney's Downing Centre District Court, focusing on the May 14, 2016, assault and related crimes. Prosecutors presented Dasha's testimony, which detailed the harrowing ordeal, alongside CCTV footage from the Parramatta unit that corroborated her account. The evidence highlighted Kayirasai's methodical tactics, including his use of a knife and attempts to erase evidence. The defense argued that Kayirasai's actions were influenced by personal circumstances, but the prosecution emphasized his intent to harm. Dasha passed away in May 2018, 2 years after the assault. Her loss deepened the sorrow felt by her friends and community, who remembered her as a vibrant, resilient individual. Tributes highlighted her determination and warmth, qualities that shone through despite the trauma she endured. Her work as a model and her efforts to build a life in Australia reflected a young woman full of promise, making her death all the more poignant. Mert Nay's trial, following his August 2019 arrest, was a significant undertaking at the Downing Centre District Court. Prosecutors argued that Nay's actions were premeditated, pointing to his possession of a knife and his behavior after the crime, which included fleeing bloodied and brandishing the weapon in public. Justice Peter Johnson, presiding over the case, described the attack as exceptionally brutal, noting its devastating impact on Michaela's family and community. Nay's defense team highlighted his mental health struggles, including untreated conditions that may have contributed to his actions. However, evidence of his awareness during the crime undermined these arguments. On May 14, 2021, Nay was sentenced to 44 years in prison with a 33-year non-parole period, reflecting the severity of the offense. In October 2023, an appeal reduced his sentence to 40 years with a 30-year non-parole period, acknowledging procedural considerations while maintaining significant accountability. In 2022, Nay pleaded guilty to assaulting a guard at Goulburn Correctional Centre, receiving a concurrent sentence that did not extend his overall term, raising questions about managing ongoing risks posed by incarcerated individuals. Sydney's CBD, a vibrant hub of commerce and culture, and Parramatta, a multicultural suburb undergoing rapid urban renewal, served as the backdrops for these tragedies. Michaela's apartment on Clarence Street, located near iconic landmarks like the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Parramatta unit where Dasha was assaulted, represented modern urban living with advanced security features. Yet, these settings fail to protect Michaela and Dasha, exposing a stark paradox: private spaces, designed for safety, can become sites of extreme violence. This contradiction fueled public discourse about urban safety and the vulnerabilities inherent in certain professions, particularly escort. The escort industry in Australia, legally recognized in New South Wales since 1995, operates within a complex and often challenging landscape. Escorts, whether working independently or through agencies, can earn substantial incomes, particularly in high-cost cities like Sydney, where living expenses drive many to seek lucrative opportunities. Michaela and Dasha's decisions to enter this field likely stemmed from the need for financial independence in a competitive economy. Escorting offers flexibility and the potential for significant earnings, with hourly rates in Sydney often ranging from $300 to $1,000, depending on services and clientele. However, the industry's risks, violence, stigma, and inadequate safety measures place workers in precarious positions. Unlike other professions, escorting lacks standardized protections, such as mandatory client screening, accessible emergency support systems, or comprehensive training on risk management. These gaps were evident in Michaela and Dasha's cases, where private meetings with clients turned deadly or traumatic, highlighting the urgent need for reform. Police investigations into both cases relied on established methods for urban crime, including security footage, witness statements, and victim reports. The rapid arrest of Mert Ney on August 13, 2019, demonstrated the power of community intervention. Bystanders, witnessing Ney's erratic behavior on Clarence Street, courageously restrained him using a chair and a milk crate, preventing further harm until police arrived. Their actions became a symbol of community resilience, widely covered by Australian media, and sparked discussions about the role of civilians in public safety. Dasha's prompt and detailed report on May 14, 2016, was equally critical, enabling police to identify Mustafa Kairisai through CCTV and her descriptions. However, the scarcity of witnesses in modern residential buildings, designed with privacy in mind, posed significant challenges. In Parramatta, the unit's security measures limited external accounts, complicating efforts to corroborate Dasha's testimony and underscoring a broader issue in investigating private space crimes. Serial offender Mustafa Kairisai was sentenced to 34 years in prison in August 2021 for 30 counts of abuse assault, and child abuse, having abuse assaulted a schoolgirl over 5 hours at 10 locations in 2016. He received an additional 38-year sentence for the abuse and robbery of 7 other women in the same year, including Dasha Volnukin. In 2021, Kairisai was given just 12 months to live after being diagnosed with an undisclosed terminal illness and undergoing chemotherapy in prison. Had he survived, he would not have been eligible for release until 2066. Correctional Services NSW confirmed that 31-year-old Kairisai died in the high-security prison block at Prince of Wales Hospital in January 2022. Australia's legal system, grounded in common law principles, delivered verdicts in both cases, but the outcomes revealed systemic challenges. Ney's 40-year sentence, adjusted on appeal in October 2023, and Kairisai's 72-year sentence in 2021 provided a measure of accountability, yet the prolonged trials and complex defenses, particularly Ney's mental health arguments, delayed resolution for the victims' families. The economic realities of Sydney, one of the world's most expensive cities, played a significant role in Michaela and Dasha's choices. With median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the CBD exceeding $700 per week in 2019, and living costs rising steadily, many young people turn to high-paying industries like escorting to afford a comfortable lifestyle. This economic pressure, combined with the flexibility of escort profession, makes it an attractive option, yet the lack of regulatory oversight leaves workers exposed to exploitation and violence. Comparative data from other decriminalized jurisdictions, such as New Zealand, suggests that mandatory client registries and worker support networks can reduce violence, offering a model for Australia to consider. Implementing such measures could address the systemic vulnerabilities exposed by these cases, ensuring that financial necessity does not come at the cost of safety. The role of technology in these investigations also warrants examination. CCTV footage was pivotal in both cases, providing visual evidence that linked Ney and Kairisai to the crime scenes. However, the limitations of surveillance in private spaces, where cameras are restricted to common areas like lobbies, highlight a gap in evidence collection. Balancing technological innovation with civil liberties is a critical challenge for Australian law enforcement, particularly in high-density urban areas where crimes often occur behind closed doors. The legacy of Michaela Dunn and Dasha Volnukin serves as a powerful call to action. Their stories, though marked by loss, highlight the resilience of individuals and communities in the face of adversity. Michaela's vibrant engagement with Sydney's cultural life and Dasha's determination to build a new life in Australia reflect young women full of potential, whose lives were cut short by preventable violence. By addressing the systemic issues exposed by their cases, urban safety gaps, escort vulnerabilities, mental health deficiencies, and sentencing disparities, Australia can honor their memory through meaningful change. Enhanced protections, better support systems, and a commitment to equity can ensure that no one else faces such preventable harm, creating safer, more inclusive communities for all. Many children enjoy attending summer camps, going on trips, or even traveling abroad. These experiences allow them to discover new places and broaden their understanding of the world. However, sometimes these adventures can take a dark turn, leading to serious situations. During the summer, Brittany in France is a beautiful destination and generally considered safe, attracting thousands of schoolchildren from various countries each year. The same was true in 1996. In mid-July, a group of students from Cornwall, England, arrived in France, including a girl named Caroline Dickinson. She was one of 40 children on the trip, accompanied by 5 teachers. At 13 years old, Caroline was an average student. This was her first trip to another European country. She was excited but felt a bit down about going without her friend, and her mother had asked the teacher to look out for her. Nevertheless, Caroline quickly connected with the other children and traveled with the group to a small village named Plain Fougars of Brittany. The trip organizers had arranged for the students' accommodation at a youth hostel. Plain Fougars had only a few shops and bars, with a population of just over 3,000 people. This small, quaint village excited Caroline, as it was her first time visiting such a cozy place. After moving into the hostel for foreign guests on July 18, 1996, Caroline enjoyed making new friends and quickly became close to a girl named Camilla. Unfortunately, they were assigned to different rooms. Camilla's room had 2 bunk beds, both of which were already occupied. Not wanting to go back to her own room, Caroline decided to bring her mattress into Camilla's room. She placed it on the floor between the 2 large beds and chose to spend the night there. Before going to sleep, Camilla and Caroline talked for a long time. The last thing Camilla remembers is singing a song about the stars with Caroline before they both fell asleep. The next morning, when the girls in the room woke up, they found Caroline lying on the floor in an unnatural position, her eyes wide open. They called her name, but she didn't respond. She was already cold. A scream of horror filled the room, drawing the attention of the teachers, who rushed in and were stunned by the sight. They immediately contacted the police. When the gendarmes arrived, they concluded that it was a murder, and the girl had died under horrific circumstances. The entire community of Plain Fougars was left in shock by the tragedy. The event was so traumatic that many found it hard to discuss. Caroline had been abused, and she died from asphyxia caused by a lump of cotton wool lodged deep in her throat, which led to her suffocation. Caroline was known for her diligence. She worked hard and excelled academically. The incident shocked not only the families of the children but also the entire French village, which had never experienced anything like it. The crime had many strange aspects. Most notably, it was hard to understand how the criminal could sneak into a room full of 5 sleeping children and kill one without waking the others. How did he manage to enter the dormitory without being seen by teachers or security? Detectives soon figured out that an outsider could gain access to the building. Fire safety regulations at the time required that entrances and exits remain open, and some were left unmonitored. This meant that anyone could easily enter the building through these doors. After the girls who shared a room with Caroline recovered from the tragedy, the police were finally able to interview them. 2 witnesses reported seeing something unusual that night. One girl woke up in the middle of the night, heard quiet moans, and noticed Caroline's legs twitching. However, she thought her roommate was just having a nightmare and decided not to investigate further. Another girl also woke up around the same time and saw a shadow move across the room toward the exit. She assumed it was one of the other girls going to the bathroom. There were no screams or anything else alarming that would have drawn anyone's attention. A development built on witness testimonies that, on the night of July 18th, Caroline chose to sleep on the floor between her friends' bunk beds so she could be close to them. Around 4 a.m., an unknown man entered the dormitory through an unlocked door. He went upstairs and found Caroline asleep on the floor. He placed a large wad of cotton in her mouth, likely to silence her, then assaulted and abused her. After killing her, he left the scene. At that same time, one of the teachers was awakened by a suspicious noise and looked out the dormitory window. She saw a stranger riding away on a motorcycle but thought he was just passing by. After seeing the stranger, she checked the sleeping areas but didn't notice anything unusual. All the children appeared to be sleeping peacefully. She chose not to turn on the lights or wake anyone, believing there was no reason to do so, and returned to her bed. The murder investigation was carried out quietly, with minimal information released. This approach was in stark contrast to similar cases in England, where press conferences were held, and the public was actively engaged to help gather information. With no new information, it appeared that the case had hit a dead end. After all required examinations, the body of Caroline was returned to her parents in England. Many people attended her funeral, hoping the criminal would be caught soon. Unfortunately, in the months that followed, no suspects emerged. The investigation stalled, and even after a year, there was still no progress. Many criticized the French police for their poor handling of the case and lack of professionalism. Caroline's parents, John and Sue, and their daughter Jenny, had made the harrowing journey to France. They returned to the small village in Brittany on the anniversary of his daughter's death. He was frustrated by the detectives' lack of communication and their failure to engage the public in the investigation. He made a public appeal for help, urging the local community to remember the tragic events surrounding the death of his 13-year-old daughter. John called on residents to share any information they might have about the case, hoping to find the person responsible. Caroline's father were astonished to find out that no fingerprints had been collected from the crime scene. In the early stages of the investigation, officers simply went door to door to talk to local residents. However, the lead detective refused to collect DNA samples from all the men in the village, even though the number of men was small. This refusal seemed unreasonable, especially given the specific nature of the killer's actions. John believed that the perpetrator lived nearby, was familiar with the area, and could easily come and go without being noticed. As John examined the French police procedures more closely, their frustration grew. In the end, he decided to reach out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to request pressure on the French authorities for a more comprehensive investigation. Thanks to the campaign he initiated, his request was approved in August 1997, which led to significant media pressure on the gendarmes. This situation even resulted in the dismissal of the detectives who were responsible for the initial investigation in France. The new lead detective quickly concentrated on the early mistakes made in the case. They chose to reassess the limited evidence and review most of the information. However, with over a year having passed since the murder, this task proved to be quite challenging. Key witnesses were interviewed again, and based on their statements, a new composite sketch of the suspected killer was created. All information was made public promptly to prevent the same mistakes from happening again. The court also approved the victim's parents' request for DNA testing of all the men in the town where their daughter was killed. This was the first mass DNA testing conducted in the history of forensic science in Britain. Caroline's father had previously believed that the attacker was a local resident, but the testing ultimately revealed no matches. Investigators were compelled to adopt new strategies and consider events beyond the village. During this process, a new detective uncovered a troubling link to an incident in the nearby village of St. Lenaire. On the night Caroline Dickinson was murdered, an unknown man had entered a youth hostel in St. Lenaire where students were staying. The intruder entered a room where 4 teenagers were sleeping but was quickly spotted. Lights were turned on, causing chaos that forced him to flee. Following a failed abuse attempt in a field, the suspect had allegedly traveled 25 kilometers in search of a new victim. Unfortunately, this crucial lead was overlooked during the initial investigation, as no one was harmed in this incident, resulting in very few details about the man. Detectives focused on the 4 witnesses from the youth hostel who had seen the likely assailant clearly in the light. Once located and interviewed, their insights helped refine a composite sketch of the suspect. As details about the mysterious abuser circulated across France, authorities alerted all youth hostels and dormitories about the situation. They also collected information on similar crimes from comparable organizations. Although data was scarce, the number of potential suspects gradually increased. By the end of 1997, approximately 3,000 local men were identified as possible offenders. To definitively determine the killer's identity, all must undergo testing and DNA profiling. This extensive process took nearly 2 years, as investigators treated the case with utmost seriousness. After some time, investigators repeatedly encountered the name Francisco Arce Montes. He is a 47-year-old Spanish citizen with a long history of criminal activity across several European countries. His first arrest was in Germany during the 1980s, where he received a 5-year sentence for abuse. Following that, he carried out an attack in the Netherlands, resulting in a few months of imprisonment. In 1994, he was arrested in France for attempting to assault a girl at a youth hostel. His appearance matched the composite sketch created from witness descriptions. Upon examining his criminal history, detectives discovered at least 10 similar incidents across Europe, all involving the abuse of girls and teenagers in youth hostels. Unfortunately, tracking him down proved difficult since he was a migrant, continuously moving between countries and making it possible for him to be anywhere in Europe or beyond. By the end of the 1990s, Francisco had gained notoriety among law enforcement agencies throughout Europe. He emerged as the prime suspect among the various candidates. To focus solely on him and rule out the others, it was essential to apprehend Francisco and obtain a DNA sample from him. Meanwhile, testing continued, and gradually, the list of 3,000 suspects was narrowed down, eliminating individuals one by one. Francisco managed to evade capture so effectively that, at one point, even the victim's parents began to question if he would ever be found. In March, a group of Irish students went on vacation and stayed at a youth hostel near the beach. That evening, an unknown man entered one of their rooms, but 2 female students caught him. He insisted he had entered the wrong room by mistake and quickly left. Although the girls were worried about what had happened, they chose not to report the incident, assuming the man was simply confused because he was drunk. The next day, this man was seen in the same hostel. He was found in one of the rooms and acting suspiciously around 2 a.m. Shortly after, he left, claiming he had confused the rooms. 4 girls who witnessed this immediately called emergency services to report a break-in and an abuse. One of the girls stated that she had been abused while she slept. She provided her underwear for examination and consented to all necessary tests. The police caught the mysterious criminal after one of the Irish students recognized him the following day. The girl was in the room that was broken into yesterday and noticed the suspicious man walking around the pool as if nothing had happened. She immediately called 911 and he was arrested. He was taken to the Miami Beach Police Department for questioning. The man denied being involved in the suspicious activities at the youth hostel over the past few days. During his interview with law enforcement, he eventually provided his real name, Francisco Montes. He claimed to be a solo traveler who had spent considerable time in South America and European countries, including Germany and France, and was currently traveling around the United States. During his conversation with the detectives, he made several strange, claiming he hadn't committed any crime and that he had merely entered other people's rooms by accident while drunk. Francisco repeatedly asked, in anger, whether masturbation was illegal in the United States, suggesting that his actions weren't harmful. His behavior was both provocative and odd. He ultimately took a DNA test and was held for further investigation. By this time, Caroline's murder had gone cold, until Tommy Onko, an immigration officer at the Detroit airport, picked up a British newspaper and read a story about the 5th anniversary of the unsolved murder. The article named Montes as a possible suspect, and on a whim, Onko decided to look up immigration information to see if a man by that name had ever been to the United States. He found the name of Francisco Arce Montes, who was in fact in police custody in Miami Beach. Onko contacted French and British authorities and was able to confirm Francisco's date of birth and hometown. Meanwhile, Montes was arrested in Miami Beach for abusing an Irish tourist at a youth hostel. The crime was similar to the modus operandi in Caroline's case, with Montez being able to enter the girls' rooms without waking the victim or her roommate. Francisco was arrested by Sergeant, later Major, Angel Vasquez of the Miami Beach Police Department. Major Vasquez obtained a DNA sample from Montez, which matched the DNA from the male fluid at the Irish Students' Youth Hostel. In addition, Major Vasquez linked Montez to 4 other similar incidents in Miami Beach. Combined with ONCO sources, investigators linked Francisco to Caroline's murder. Francisco's DNA was later matched to DNA from the Caroline Dickinson murder investigation. The state of Florida suspended charges against Francisco to allow for his extradition to France to face charges for Caroline's murder. Finally, there was a genuine possibility of solving Caroline's murder. The major obstacle was the distance. At any moment, Francisco could be released on bail and vanish, traveling anywhere in the world. They began communicating with detectives in France through the former consul. Their concerns were finally alleviated when they received confirmation of Francisco's name and date of birth, which matched the information held by French authorities. It was discovered that Francisco had traveled around Europe before coming to the United States, where he was working as a truck driver. In March 2001, Francisco was arrested in Florida and identified as the main suspect in the murder of Caroline Dickinson, which occurred in France 5 years earlier. At this point, the young women who had been attacked in Miami recognized Francisco as the intruder who had broken into their dorm rooms, enabling the authorities to detain him. DNA from bodily fluids found on Caroline's body was sent to France for testing to confirm a match. This was a critical moment for European investigators and Caroline's parents. A few days later, the test results revealed an almost 100% match. Francisco Montez was extradited from the United States to France after 6 months, and it took another 2 years for him to confess to his crimes. He admitted to abusing a 13-year-old girl in France but claimed that Caroline Dickinson's death was accidental. Francisco argued that he had a mental illness, which he believed made him unaccountable for his actions. However, his attempt to avoid punishment due to insanity was unsuccessful. Experts concluded he was sane and capable of standing trial following several assessments. During the trial, he rarely spoke, mostly in Spanish, and appeared calm, showing no remorse for his actions. He was required to testify, and Francisco explained in French how the murder occurred. He stated that the defendant had traveled from Rennes to Plain Fougers with plans to return to England, where he was residing at the time. After getting lost, he sought a place to stay for the night and found the only building in the small village with its lights on, a youth hostel. He entered at night and saw that everyone was asleep. He began to check the rooms and noticed Caroline sleeping on the floor, whom he viewed as an easy target. Francisco approached her, covered her mouth with his hand, and then assaulted her. He ended up abusing her and accidentally killed her with a piece of cotton wool that suffocated her. Panicked, he fled the scene. During the trial, Francisco asked the victim's parents for forgiveness, acknowledging, he knows the Dickinson family will never forgive him. The parents of Caroline, who were divorced at the time, along with their youngest daughter, attended the trial and provided testimony. They described their daughter as an innocent girl who wanted to explore the world and travel to different countries. This trip was a step towards fulfilling her dream. The parents had allowed Caroline to go on the trip without any concerns, believing that France was a safe place and that she would be supervised by her teachers. Caroline and her classmates were scheduled to visit various interesting sites. No one could have predicted the tragic outcome of this journey. Had they known, they would never have permitted their daughter to go. They did not forgive the criminal. During the trial, details about the defendant's life were uncovered. His mental health issues began in his teenage years when he started showing symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder. He was fixated on cleanliness, using a handkerchief to open doors and turn on lights, avoiding touching anything with his bare hands, meticulously washing everything with mineral water and soap multiple times. At the age of 20, Francisco started experiencing difficulties. After his friends learned about this, they sent him to a psychiatrist, who diagnosed him with depression and progressive schizophrenia. In the mid-1970s, he left Spain and traveled across Europe. He lived a transient lifestyle, working as a waiter, hotel doorman, or driver, but primarily relied on money from his father. An acquaintance noted that Francisco was very familiar with all the youth hostels in Europe and often sought the company of girls, particularly those aged 11 to 12, considering anyone over 20 to be too old for him. His friend also recalled a chilling admission from Francisco, where he expressed that he saw nothing wrong with killing a person. At one point, he had a girlfriend whom he physically abused. She bore him a son but eventually left him due to the violence. Afterward, he went on another trip where he continued to assault and abuse women. On June 14, 2004, following a 3-week trial, Francisco Arce Montes was found guilty of murdering and abusing Caroline Dickinson. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The victim's parents felt a sense of relief, believing that their 8 years of waiting for justice and their activism had led to the conviction of their daughter's murderer. However, the situation did not end there. After 20 years, he filed an appeal but later withdrew it. Everyone was shocked by the long list of offenses, which took around 10 minutes to read. Over the 20 years before receiving a life sentence, he committed 4 abuses in Germany. South American authorities also believe he abused at least a dozen women within their borders, in addition to attacking many others. Additionally, there was one attempted abuse in France before Caroline's death. It's evident that the true extent of his crimes could have been much larger, but the trial only considered officially recorded cases where victims had reported to the police. Notably, all the other victims survived. Caroline may have been the only one who did not survive after being abused. U.S. detectives investigating his case believe he is linked to a series of abuses and murders in both the U.S. and Europe. His conviction has led to serious questions about why he was not apprehended sooner. He could have been arrested in Spain as early as autumn 1997, a year after Caroline's murder, yet he avoided capture. The lack of cooperation among law enforcement agencies across European countries hindered the process of transferring him to the French gendarmerie. The parents of the victim were troubled by this as well. Despite Francisco's conviction, the victim's mother and father continued to voice their frustration about the insufficient collaboration between international authorities, which allowed criminals to keep committing offenses without facing consequences. The parents of Caroline pushed for the establishment of an international DNA database to help address the situation. Throughout their advocacy, they frequently shared their daughter's story. This case highlighted the importance of collaboration among law enforcement agencies, even across different continents, in stopping dangerous criminals. Francisco's legal troubles continued after Caroline's case. The last people heard from Francisco in 2015, when he was convicted of abusing a young woman, a year after he had killed Caroline. He was extradited to Spain to face charges for the abuse of an 18-year-old girl. He deceived her into allowing him into her apartment building by pretending he had lost his keys. Once inside, he threatened her with a knife and abused her. For this crime, he was extradited and tried in Spain, where he was sentenced to 11 years in prison. He is expected to serve his jail time in Spain once he has been released from prison in France, where he is scheduled to stay until January 2027. Francisco has nearly run out of options for appealing his sentence. His earliest opportunity for release will be in 2038. However, it is improbable that he will live to see his 88th birthday while imprisoned.